exam prep. Welcome to another session on international relations. So, today we shall be taking up module number 5, which deals with India's relations with Pakistan. This chapter is extremely important for your mains exam given the complexities involved in India Pakistan relations. So, today we are going to study many important topics, including all the disputes and issues between India and Pakistan. So, let's begin this discussion by first looking at a map of Pakistan. Let's understand the geography of Pakistan and how it influences the international politics of Pakistan. So, first, let's identify the major provinces of Pakistan. If you look at the map, you can notice Punjab over here. This was the large Punjab province in the colonial period, which was partitioned in 1947. So, when India Pakistan gained independence and when Pakistan was partitioned from India, the Punjab province to the west was partitioned between India and Pakistan, just like the Bengal province to the east was partitioned between the two sides. So, one half of Punjab fell under India, the other half came under Pakistan. So, this is the Punjab province that you see here in the map. The Punjab region has been the most dominant region in Pakistan's politics since 1947 till date, right? The Punjabi elite, they have been the most influential and dominant class in Pakistan's politics. We were mentioning this under the liberation of Bangladesh war as well. We discussed how the Bengalis were oppressed by the Punjabi elite, correct? So if you look at the Pakistani army, the top army generals, the army chiefs, the top ISI officials, even the prime ministers, presidents, and all the top ministers and top political leaders, majority of them have come from the Punjab region. So this makes the Punjab region the most dominant amongst all the provinces of Pakistan. And Punjab is also a hub of radicalism. There are many radical organizations that have a strong base in Punjab, be it Jamaat ud-Dawa, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, all these outfits and their terror leaders, they find a support base in Punjab. They freely conduct their rallies, they raise donations, they carry out recruitment, they, they deliver anti-India speeches, and they even have strongholds and headquarters located in Punjab. For example, can you see this place called Bahawalpur? Bahawalpur is a strong hold of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Hafiz Saeed, the founder of Jamaat ud-Dawa and Lashkar-e-Toiba, has a strong presence at Bahawalpur. It also has major cities like Lahore, Faisalabad, which are closer to the Indian border. Rawalpindi, Islamabad are also located in this sector itself. Now, apart from Punjab, you have Balochistan, which you can see here, the largest province of Pakistan. Balochistan is blessed with immense resources. It has plenty of resources, and as you can see, it has access to the sea. It opens to Arabian Sea. So the Baloch province has a large coastline, which is of great strategic significance. So this is the home of the Baloch people, the Baloch community. The Baloch community, they never wanted to join Pakistan in 1947 when the British granted independence, right? The Indian Independence Act of 1947 had been enacted. Under the Indian Independence Act, two independent dominions were created, that is India and Pakistan. But all the princely states and the other regions, they had the choice to either join India or Pakistan or remain independent. So Baloch region wanted to move away from Pakistan and make this region its own country, because the Baloch region extends to Iran as well. Iran is a neighbor here of Pakistan. The Baloch region extends into parts of Iran. So the Baloch ethnic group, they wanted to unite all these Baloch areas and form Balochistan for their own, to make it their own country. But Pakistan would forcefully occupy Balochistan, and it has committed a lot of atrocities against the Baloch people. Even today, this is a conflict zone for Pakistan. It's an internal divide of Pakistan, because the Baloch people have rebelled, and since many decades, They are leading an insurgent terrorist war against Pakistan, and there are several rebel groups, Baloch rebel groups, that wage a war against Pakistan. So this is a highly unstable region, but Pakistani forces, the Pakistani army and the ISI, they are known to commit brutal atrocities against the Baloch people in Balochistan. Here, the major city would be Quetta. Quetta is very close to the Afghan border, and this is where Pakistan had sheltered the Talibani leadership. When the Afghan Taliban leadership was thrown out from Afghanistan following the US invasion in 2001, right? The Talibani leaders were hosted here at Quetta by the Pakistani leadership. Next, you can see the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. This boundary line is called the Durand Line. This boundary line was drawn by the Durand Commission. It's called the Durand Line. All right. So this area that you're seeing here, the Af-Pak border region, this is one of the most sensitive, delicate regions in the world. This is a global hub of terrorism. Pakistan has virtually created a terror factory, a terror ecosystem all across the Durand Line. Be it the Taliban, be it factions of Taliban like Haqqani Network, Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen. Many of these terrorist groups are sheltered all across the Af-Pak border. Even the Baloch border and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa border, both are very, very sensitive, especially the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, right? These areas are the tribal areas of Pakistan. It was previously called FATA, federally administered tribal areas. You'd have heard of places like Waziristan, South and North Waziristan, or maybe Swat Valley, right? So such places, they were all part of the federally administered tribal areas. They were directly administered by the national government, by the central government. Now it's been organized into the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So you can see cities like Peshawar here. So in and around Peshawar and along this boundary here in the tribal belt, there are many terror groups that are hosted here by Pakistan. All right. Notorious outfits like Haqqani Network. Haqqani Network is a faction of the Afghan Taliban. It's one of the branches of Afghan Taliban, which has been nurtured by Pakistan's ISI. It primarily operates here in these border areas. Even Al-Qaeda has a very strong presence in these border areas. So apart from the Afghan Taliban, there are many other terror groups that freely operate here. You also have Islamic State, ISIS Khorasan province, which has gained a lot of influence along the Durand Line. So multiple terror groups operate here. Many of them are nurtured and supported by the Pakistani state, the deep state of Pakistan. When I say deep state, it refers to the Pakistani army and the ISI. These are the hidden organs of the Pakistani state. The hidden part of the Pakistani state, which is directly aiding and backing terrorism, right? So all across the Durand Line, it's a very unstable region. So especially towards the tribal belt, there are multiple terror groups hosted by Pakistan. It has created the entire terror infrastructure. A safe haven, a sanctuary exists for terrorists to hide, to train, to raise funds, to organize weapons, and to plan their attacks. So this is one of the most sensitive regions, and India faces multiple threats from this region, right? Then you have the Sindh province, which is an extension of India's Gujarat, right? When India-Pakistan were partitioned, this area was also divided, which would become Sindh for Pakistan, Gujarat for India. So this is where you have Karachi, the major commercial city, a naval base and a port as well, which faces Arabian Sea, and also a hub of organized crime and terrorism. Many criminal cartels, including the Dawood Ibrahim cartel, have a major presence at Karachi, and even terrorist groups have a major presence at Karachi. Here you can also see the Gwadar port, the strategic Gwadar port of Balochistan, which has been built by China. China has constructed this strategic Gwadar port that faces the Arabian Sea. Now, apart from all these places, We have Pakistan occupied Kashmir. These parts of Jammu and Kashmir, which should belong to India, has been illegally occupied by Pakistan since 1947. It includes the Gilgit-Baltistan region as well over here. So today we are going to discuss the Kashmir dispute in detail. We'll understand the nature of Kashmir conflict. So please note that these parts of J&K, the erstwhile state of J&K as it existed, has been illegally occupied by Pakistan since 1947. So India does not have control over these territories. That's why we refer to it as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. That is the only term which is acceptable for us. All right? Because Pakistan uses other names. The international community uses other names. Those names are unacceptable for India. So be very careful in the exams as well. Pakistan calls it Azad Kashmir. This is rejected by India. So never use this term. All right? It's not Azad Kashmir. That's according to Pakistan. According to India, this is just POK, nothing else. It's Pakistan occupied Kashmir. That is the exact word you have to use. Be very careful. All right? The international community, they use other terms. That is other countries. Let's say US or European countries or other countries in the world, right? Or even other international organizations. They have different terms. They call it Pakistan administered Kashmir. And they refer to the Indian side as Indian administered Kashmir. So these references are also rejected by India. India rejects this reference as well. Because using the term administered Kashmir would mean that Pakistan has a legitimate claim, right? So India rejects these claims. We don't use the term Azad Kashmir or Indian administered Kashmir or Pakistan administered Kashmir. The only terminology India uses for the occupied areas is POK, and the rest of it, we just call it Jammu and Kashmir, nothing else. That's the only term you should be using. All right, be very careful. It's very important, because how else will you justify your claim? If you are claiming these territories, right, since 1947, India does have a legitimate claim. Legally, technically speaking, these parts should belong to India. The Indian position is absolutely the correct position. It is Pakistan which is in breach, which is in violation. It is Pakistan which has occupied these areas. So we accordingly refer to it as Pakistan occupied Kashmir. That's why any wrong interpretation of the map is also rejected by the Indian government, right? So we can understand why international community depicts it like that, because they look at it as a disputed area and they call it Pakistan administered Kashmir and Indian administered Kashmir. But India objects to this because in a way it starts justifying the Pakistani claim. So India believes Pakistan has no claim here. So we reject these labels that are attached and we just call it POK. The occupied areas are POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and just Jammu and Kashmir on the Indian side. Now, if you look at this border here between India and Pakistan, there is one very important point I would like to raise. There are two types of boundaries between India and Pakistan. We have a temporary border, temporary de facto border in Jammu and Kashmir sector called LOC, the line of control. Remember, under liberation of Bangladesh war, we studied the Shimla Agreement. There I explained how the ceasefire line was renamed into the line of control. So this is your ceasefire line. In 1947, when the first India-Pakistan war ended, these were the positions that were held by India and Pakistan. That became the temporary de facto border until a permanent solution could be found to the Kashmir dispute. So whatever positions we held in 1947, the same positions are held even today. This ceasefire line has later been renamed in 1972 as the line of control, the LOC. So this is a temporary de facto border. It's an unsettled border. This is where we have the Kashmir dispute. The rest of the border that you see here, this whole stretch of the border from lower parts of Jammu to Punjab, Rajasthan, all the way till Gujarat, till here, till this point. This is called the IB, the international border. This is a permanent settled border between India and Pakistan. From the lower parts of Jammu to Punjab, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. This entire line that you're seeing here, this is a undisputed boundary. This boundary has been permanently settled. We have no disputes along this boundary. This is the full and final boundary between India and Pakistan, and hence it's called IB, the international border between India and Pakistan. However, at the tip of the IB, where the IB was supposed to meet the Arabian Sea in the Run of Kutch area, this is the Run of Kutch, the marshy wetland area. At this point, there is a minor dispute between India and Pakistan. It's called the Sir Creek dispute. All right, there is one minor dispute at the end of international border where it touches the Arabian Sea. So this is where we have the Sir Creek dispute. We are going to study this later. Is that clear? So having this basic understanding is extremely important. Understanding the geography of Pakistan, understanding these borders, right? Understanding the significance of some of these locations will actually make it easier for you to understand what we are going to discuss next. Is that clear? So please make a note of these points. Based on this, we are going to have a detailed discussion on India-Pakistan today. First of all, let us answer the most basic question. I'm sure many of you would have thought about this, at least if not today, previously would have definitely asked this question, that why is Pakistan like this? Why is Pakistan so hostile to India? What explains Pakistan's obsession with India? Many experts believe that Pakistan is obsessed with India. It's obsessed with triggering issues for India, waging war against India, in carrying out destabilization of Kashmir and Punjab. Right? This has become an obsession for the Pakistani state. Now, which state in its right mind would go to the extent of breeding terrorism, harboring terrorism, using terrorism as a state policy, as a geopolitical tool, right? Even at the cost of its own well-being, even at the cost of its own economy, even at the cost of its own people, Pakistan has bred and nurtured radicalism, extremism, and used terrorism as a weapon. So what explains this mindset, right? What are the origins of this conflict? These are very basic fundamental questions that any student should be asking. Is that clear? So let's understand the roots of this conflict. Let's answer why Pakistan behaves like this, why Pakistan has adopted this strategy. Let's also look at the psyche or the mindset of the Pakistani leadership. What does the Pakistani elite think? What is their line of thinking? What is their mindset? Right? These will help us answer these basic questions. Based on that, we can talk about all the disputes and issues that we have. Then it becomes easier to understand. Now, the roots of India-Pakistan conflict, right? They predate the existence of India and Pakistan. India-Pakistan came into existence in 1947, right? The nation state of India, the nation state of Pakistan were created only in 1947. But the root of this conflict, the root of this rivalry, this enmity, this hostility, right, predates the independence of the two countries. It goes all the way back to the colonial period and to our freedom struggle. Remember, I told you in the very first class that most of the geopolitical issues and the disputes and social challenges in South Asia, they are all of colonial origin. Colonial blunders, the colonial mistakes that were made and left behind, they continue to harm the region even today. The same happens in West Asia and North Africa as well. Look at the Israel-Palestine issue, right? Look at what has happened in the last few days. This issue as well has a deep-rooted colonial connection, colonial imperial blunders committed by the British, which is affecting the region even today, right? The colonial policies, as we discussed in the previous classes, it led to divisions in the society, in the community. The divide and rule policy of the British, it induced deep rooted communalization in India's freedom struggle. The Indian society was strongly polarized on communal lines, and this was a deliberate policy of the British. They would encourage religious extremists on both the sides, especially after 1857, after the first war of Indian independence. Right? Britain was very serious about controlling the Indian colony and to break up the Indian national movement. So the easiest strategy for the British was to break up the society on various lines, various divisions: communal division, caste division, ethnic and racial divisions. So they tried this policy in other places as well, in Sri Lanka, in Africa and West Asia as well. They've used the same strategy of divide and rule, introducing these strong divides between major communities. In the case of India, right, the biggest division was the communal division, the division between Hindus and Muslims. Even though India's freedom struggle was largely secular, inherently secular, it was a united freedom struggle, right? There was a strong communal angle that was added by the religious extremists on both the sides, which was proactively supported by the British. Now, when leaders like Jinnah came up, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and established Muslim League, and later the idea of Pakistan was championed as a separate exclusive state for Muslims, right? This was clearly a communal demand, and this would be encouraged by the British as a matter of policy. Similarly, the British would extend support to Hindutva extremists, to organizations like Hindu Mahasabha, which was an extremist organization, would get direct backing of the British to try and push India to become a theological state, which Pakistan would become later. So the very idea of Pakistan, since the idea was proposed, was always on religious lines. The problem here is again not with any religion. As I mentioned in previous classes, religion is misused, misinterpreted by political elements for their own gains, their own self-interests. No religion preaches radicalism or extremism, right? But in every religion, there are strands of extremism, be it Christianity, be it Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism as well, right? In every faith, you find these strands of extremism, which is the work of these political extremists. So Pakistan today, right, it's a failed state. It's a rogue state. It's a corrupt state. The reason why Pakistan has got here is because of where it started from. It started on the wrong foot. It started with all the wrong ideas. It started out with a very narrow, closed mindset. Whereas India, fortunately for us, took the exact opposite path. The credit for this goes to our freedom fighters, our founding fathers, the vision, farsightedness of our leaders of that era. If we had fallen prey to communal tendencies, if we had turned into a majoritarian Hindu state like Pakistan did, right? Pakistan turned into an Islamic state, adopted official state religion, and became a theological state. It deliberately promoted radical religion. It would promote religious fundamentalism as a state policy. So, fortunately for India, we went the other way. We went the opposite path. India would inherently become a secular state, a constitutional democracy where everyone would be treated equal, right? Be it a religious minority or a linguistic minority, person from any region, person of any gender would get equal treatment in India. But that would never be the case with Pakistan, because right from the beginning, the very idea of Pakistan was a closed idea. It was a narrow idea. It was a communal demand to create Pakistan. And when the British met the demand, right, and promoted extremists on both the sides, it had induced widespread communal polarization in India's freedom struggle. You would have read this in modern history as well. In early 1900s, especially after the partition of Bengal, large scale communal riots had broken out between Hindus and Muslims. Right? Innocents were suffering in between on both the sides, but extremists on both the sides were targeting each other. The partition of Bengal in 1905 was again on communal lines. The British said it was for administrative purposes, but the reality, the truth is that it was a communal partition. Even though later Bengal was reunified in 1911, the seeds of a partition was already sown. Many historians believe that the idea of India-Pakistan partition, which happened in 1947, that idea, the seed for that idea was sown in 1905 when Bengal was partitioned. It was based on this idea that Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah championed the idea of a Pakistan, a separate state for Muslims. Is that clear? So the problem was not even in demanding for a separate state, because many communities were demanding for a separate state. The problem was in turning the country into a narrow-minded theological state. Right from the beginning, Pakistani leaders adopted a very narrow interpretation of religion. They adopted a very rigid version of Sunni Islam, which is a misinterpreted version of Islam, which is associated with the Arab Middle Eastern strain of Islam. It would adopt Wahhabism, Salafism, a very rigid, radical stand of Sunni Islam, and it would start persecuting religious minorities from the very beginning. Right from independence, all religious minorities, be it Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, and even Muslims, like Shias, for example, Hazaras, Ahmadiyas, even Sunni Muslims who wouldn't abide by the rigid version of the state religion that Pakistan was promoting, they would all be targeted and persecuted. So this became the story and the fate of Pakistan. The fate was sealed. The state was directly involved in backing, nurturing, and promoting religious fundamentalism. Extremism became the state's policy to keep its people under control, to target the enemies, right? And no wonder Pakistan relies on radical extremism and terrorism as a geopolitical weapon as well, right? So that's why we all should be fortunate. We are really fortunate. We should thank our founding fathers, the vision of our freedom fighters, our freedom struggle, and the Indian Constitution, because we took the exact opposite path. It would have been easy for India to turn into a majoritarian state as well, like Pakistan did. Fortunately, we didn't. Right? If India had done that, if that mistake had happened, we would have ended up at the same place where Pakistan is today. So India would march a different path in the opposite direction as a secular state, an open society with equal rights for every citizen. This marks a fundamental difference in the idea of India, the idea of Pakistan. Now, if you don't understand this difference, right, you cannot appreciate the freedom that you get being in India, and you cannot understand the policy of Pakistan, like why Pakistan obsesses with terrorism. Why is it going to this extent of self-destruction? This is almost suicide that Pakistan is committing. And Pakistan is almost there. Today, it's facing a grave economic crisis, a political crisis, and a very serious security crisis. It's on the brink of collapse, right? So to understand why Pakistan has done this, you need to understand this idea, the idea of India, the idea of Pakistan, where it comes from. The idea of Pakistan comes from a very closed mindset, a narrow mindset. It's based on a very narrow communal interpretation, right, which was encouraged by the British as a matter of their policy. The idea of India is based on a more open, free idea, which is rooted in Indian civilization as well, right? The Indian civilization has always been a tolerant, diverse civilization, and this is the beauty and strength of the Indian society. So as long as India remains a free, open, secular society, it will remain a strong society. It will remain a strong country. The moment you start looking inward, the moment you start developing narrow tendencies, majoritarian tendencies, that is where countries face devastating problems. We have seen many other examples. There are similar examples around the world. Any country which played with religious fundamentalism has collapsed. Is that clear? Where state merges with religious fundamentalism, that marks the collapse of a free liberal order. So this is the fundamental difference between India and Pakistan. This is what makes India India and Pakistan Pakistan. This explains the roots of the conflict. Be it now, take up any issue, Kashmir issue, the Kargil war, the policy of terrorism, right? Any issue you discuss, it is all linked to this fundamental idea. The idea that Pakistan should become this theological state where it goes to any extent, even using radicalism and extremism to target India, right? But it does not explain why is it obsessed with India, right? Let me explain why is it obsessed with India. Why India is Pakistan's biggest obsession. To understand this, you have to look at the mindset of the Pakistani leadership. The psyche of the Pakistani elite is something we need to assess from 1950s till date. The Pakistani leadership from the beginning felt very insecure about its large neighbor, India. Starting right from the days of Jinnah, the Pakistani leadership, which includes the army leadership as well, they've always felt insecure about the size and scale of India. Because obviously, when Pakistan was created, it would be a smaller country, many times smaller than India, with much limited resources as compared to India. So Pakistan has always tried to pitch itself on an equal footing with India. Somehow Pakistan has always seen that it's in a competition, it's in a race with India. Given the complex history on how India, on the basis of how India Pakistan were created, right? For the weaker power, which was Pakistan, it's understandable why it would try to pitch itself on an equal footing with India. But this competition became unhealthy competition. Since childhood, you would have heard your teachers, your parents telling that competition should be healthy. Healthy competition drives a good spirit. Unhealthy competition breeds jealousy, hatred, turns into extremism eventually. In the case of Pakistan, it's the other one. Pakistan has gotten into a very unhealthy competition at the beginning. In the 1950s, right, and even right after independence and partition, Pakistan pitched itself on an equal footing with India. In front of the world, it wanted to be seen as an equal of India, right? So this led to an unhealthy obsession with India, where Pakistan has disassociated itself from its South Asian linkages, and it has deliberately tried to align with its Arab Middle Eastern linkages. See, even if you look at the history of the region, both ancient and medieval history, today's Pakistan, where it is located, right? And not just location, if you look at the Pakistani society as well, it has more linkages and connections with South Asian history and South Asian heritage. The strand of Islam you find in India, in the Indian subcontinent, right? This is very unique compared to the more rigid version that you find in Middle East and the Arab region. But Pakistan, post-independence, has deliberately tried to cut off from its Indian heritage, from its South Asian heritage, and it has tried to link itself with the more rigid Arab Middle Eastern heritage. This shows that, in a way, Pakistan is embarrassed to be associated with South Asia. It doesn't align with the, the civilizational values attached with the Indian civilization, right? But it's very ironic and it's very unfortunate because the very roots of Indian civilization, which starts somewhere around the Indus Valley civilization and the Harappan civilization, right? Those sites are located in today's Pakistan itself. This was the seat of the ancient Indian civilization. But Pakistan wants to erase this part of history. It wants to move away from that Indian heritage, that South Asian heritage, and wants to associate more with the Arab Middle Eastern heritage. And you see this in their school textbooks. Pakistani school children, they are taught wrong history. Deliberately, they are taught the wrong history from many, many years. This is nothing but propaganda. There is extensive propaganda in the Pakistani state to teach the wrong history. This has a big impact, right? It breeds the wrong ideas from the very beginning. And there is a deliberate attempt to project India as enemy number one of Pakistan, right? See, India is not an expansionist power. We have never tried taking others' territories. India has never annexed territories which don't belong to us, right? We are not we are not aggressive military powers like others. India has always maintained that sense of balance. But despite that, Pakistan has projected this image as though India is an imminent threat for the country. These sentiments became stronger after India broke Pakistan into two parts in 1971. This definitely had a huge impact. The Pakistani obsession with India, the Pakistani obsession to use terrorism to target and destabilize India, is largely influenced by the events of 1971. Because the defeat of 1971 was the most humiliating moment for Pakistan. Imagine a country being broken into two parts. Imagine you losing more than half your country, right? Pakistan blames India for this. It does not realize the atrocities it committed in East Pakistan. India's intervention was only justified. Our intervention was only to help the Bengali community and to serve our strategic interests, right? If Pakistan had not abused and committed a genocide against Bengalis, there would be no Indian intervention, right? India's aggressive intervention was a response to the Pakistani atrocities. So Pakistan ignores its own role. Even today, Pakistani school children are taught that it was India which initiated the 1971 war. It was India which attacked Pakistan and broke Pakistan into two. They don't teach them what Pakistani army did with Bengali minorities. They don't teach them about the genocide that they carried out. They project India as the threat. It was India which attacked Pakistan and took away half their country. Now, this at the ground level breeds resentment, breeds hatred, right? And this is a deliberate strategy. This is how the deep state of Pakistan retains power and controls all the key power centers without question, without challenge. When I say deep state, I'm referring to the combination of the Pakistani army and the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence agency. See, in Pakistan, if you evaluate Pakistan's political structure, many experts they say that there is a dual power center. There are two power centers. Deliberately, a dual power center has been established, where on the front you have a civilian government, and ironically, it's a democratic elected government. Sometimes you forget, it slips your mind that Pakistan is a democracy, right? When you hear that, you feel shocked. You ask yourself, is Pakistan a democracy, right? Because it slips your mind. You don't associate Pakistan with democracy, but it is on paper. It is a elected democracy. It has civilian elections, right? You have a civilian government which is elected by the people, but it's a namesake democracy. The civilian government doesn't have the true authority, doesn't have the genuine powers in its hands. The political parties are largely controlled by the deep state. The Pakistani military has extended its arms into every institution, into every party, and it tightly controls the politics of Pakistan. Is that clear? Now, when elections happen, right now elections are due in Pakistan. Within a month, elections are going to happen by November. All right. So when elections happen, when new leaders are elected, when new governments are formed, trust me, most of it is rigged. It's manipulated. When prime ministers take over, right, or when presidents take over from one another, when all these changes are happening in the country, they are not genuine organic changes. They're all orchestrated by the deep state. The army, ISI, they orchestrate these changes. So there is a duality of power. On the front, you have an elected civilian government where Pakistan claims it's a so-called democracy, but in reality, the authority lies with the deep state. All the key decisions, the big decisions, be it its military strategy, its military modernization, its nuclear program, its foreign policy, even its economic policy, they're largely controlled by the deep state, the army. In Pakistan, if you ask me who's the most powerful person, it is the army chief. It's not the Pakistani prime minister. It's not the Pakistani president. The most powerful individual in Pakistan is the army chief, the chief of the Pakistani army. All right? So it's a virtual dictatorship. Understood? And in the past, There have been military dictatorships. Pakistan has seen many military coups where the military has played a role in politics from the beginning. Now, this is what happens when you encourage radicalism, extremism, and fundamentalism. When you obsess with security issues, right, and give a bigger role for security forces to play, they will undermine the civilian government itself. So, in Pakistan, the army leaders from the beginning have been playing a role in Pakistan's politics. There have been multiple military coups in the country where civilian governments have been thrown out, and the Pakistani army has captured power, establishing military dictatorships. So, this has allowed the army and the ISI to extend its arms everywhere into every government institution. That's why I told you all the key policies, all the big decisions are taken by the deep state. None of the big policies will go ahead without the approval of the deep state, right? So let's say Pakistani army doesn't like a particular prime minister. They will ensure that prime minister will go. Let's say Pakistan, the army, the deep state, they don't like a particular politician, right? They will ensure that politician will be removed. Either they're removed from their position, pushed out through a controversy, or they are forced to step down, they are threatened, or even in a worst case, they are killed, they are assassinated. Many Pakistani leaders have been assassinated, right? In fact, many Pakistani civilian governments have not even completed their full term. Most of the elected civilian governments, they failed to complete their full term. Look at Imran Khan, right? Prime Minister Imran Khan, who belongs to Tehreek-e-Insaf party, came to power with the backing of the army. But later, as Imran Khan started creating a base for himself, he was resisted by the army and the ISI. And recently, in the last few months, there has been a major political crisis. And the army ISI, they have ensured that they have removed Imran Khan from the position. Right? They not only pushed out Imran Khan, but right now he has been arrested as well on corruption charges. So this is what happens to Pakistani prime ministers. Either they are pushed out of their position, or they are arrested, they are thrown into jail, they are made to flee the country itself. Nawaz Sharif had run away, Parvez Musharraf had run away, or else they are killed or assassinated. So it highlights the extent to which the army and the deep state control the politics of Pakistan, right? Now, if they have to remain relevant, if they have to ensure that they don't face a challenge to their authority, they need a constant external enemy. Because see, in Pakistan, there are so many economic and social problems that by this time there should have been a revolution. In any state, take any society for that matter, good governance is what prevents a revolution, a social revolution. No people will accept oppression. No people will accept backwardness, deprivation. If a society remains poor all the time, if the government doesn't care about them, if there is no good governance, and if the leaders remain rich and powerful, whereas the people are suffering, no such society can survive. This is a given fact. There are theories in public administration that what prevents a revolution, right, is good governance. If governance fails, then the society will definitely witness an uprising. But in Pakistan, this hasn't happened. In Pakistan, things are horrible. There is no electricity, no water. Their currency has taken a massive hit. There is massive inflation. All right, no proper education, no job opportunities. Right? The basics are not provided. And yet, crores of people, they stand behind their army. They loyally stand behind their army. They genuinely believe their army is working for them. So, what explains this phenomena? Right? How come the masses, how come they've never questioned the army? Right? If people had suffered to this extent in any other country, there would have been an uprising. They would have thrown out these leaders. Not just the government, the army itself would have been completely targeted, and there would have been a complete social uprising. But this has never happened in Pakistan. Right? So there must be some reason. How does the deep state keep that control over the Pakistani society? It keeps that control by projecting a constant external threat, an imminent, dangerous threat. Now, let's say You take a household in a family, right? If there are no external threats, right, the family will be focused in inwards, looking into family issues, focused on family relations. The moment you say there is an external threat, the family will unite, right? The family comes together to fight off any external threat first, and then they'll try to resolve their interpersonal differences. The same happens in geopolitics as well. Now look at Israel. Israel is thinking of forming a national unity government. Until recently, there was chaos in Israel. Political parties were divided as the Israeli government was carrying out some controversial judicial reforms. So there were deep-rooted political divisions in Israel. But now, after the attack of Hamas, now that Israel has gone to war, all the parties have united because they have an external threat, a common external threat. They are thinking of forming a national unity government, right? Take the Khalistan movement, the revival of Khalistan movement. All the opposition parties have backed the ruling BJP, right? Otherwise, Indian political parties are always blaming each other, fighting against each other. On the Khalistan issue, you see that all the parties have come together to take a common stand to oppose a common enemy, right? This is a phenomena. It happens in geopolitics. This is human nature as well, right? When you face an external threat, like-minded people come together. They bind together despite whatever differences they have. So as long as there is a constant external threat to Pakistan, the army can keep justifying its position. See, if you look at army chiefs, top army generals and ISI generals and officials, they've all become filthy rich. They've all accumulated millions and millions of dollars in wealth, right? All their children, they study abroad. They're settled in US and Europe. They don't suffer any of the consequences. Whereas it's millions of poor Pakistanis who are at the receiving end. Despite the stark income social divide and the power divide, no one is questioning the deep state. The reason is the deep state has succeeded in projecting India as a common, constant, imminent threat. Is that clear? It always brings up the bogey of 1971. It shows how India broke Pakistan into two. It projects that India is waiting to invade Pakistan and destroy the country. It also projects threats from Western countries as well. Threats from US, threats from other European countries. And whenever needed, the deep state will use terrorism as a weapon to instigate deliberate tensions so that it can justify its position and solidify its control over power. Now, let's say in Pakistan, some internal divisions are coming up. All right, let's say the deep state feels threatened that there is some political opposition coming up. So, what the deep state will do is that they'll use a proxy, they'll use a terror group to carry out an attack against India. Let's say tomorrow, people of Pakistan start questioning the army, they start questioning the government, right? Any such opposition, once it comes up, the deep state, all it has to do to end that opposition is to sponsor an attack against India. How does this help? Because a major attack against India will trigger India. India will call for action. India will put pressure on Pakistan. There would be public pressure to attack Pakistan and take revenge as well, to retaliate using military methods. The moment these tensions come up, you need not even attack Pakistan. Just statements from leaders in media and by the public that we should retaliate, go to war with Pakistan. Just the statements are enough to bring the people together in Pakistan. The deep state will work on this, right? It will show that India is about to attack. India is an imminent threat. So defending the country becomes a priority. And Pakistan is constantly in that mode. It's constantly kept on a war mode by the deep state. That is why the deep state relies on extremism. It relies on terrorism as a weapon. So you can clearly see that problem is not with religion. Religion is being misused here for geopolitics to serve the political interests of these army officials, the ISI officials, right? They misuse religion. They're using religious fundamentalist groups and terror groups as a tool to keep India on the hook, to keep India on the constant boil, right? They use terrorism as a trigger to provoke India every now and then. And when there is a reaction from India, right? This helps the deep state to cement its power. The army and the ISI can project that India is waiting to attack. So when there is such an external threat, people will not question the army or the ISI, right? They genuinely believe even now that army is their savior. In Pakistan, there is a lot of loyalty towards the army that doesn't even exist towards political parties, because that is the culture which has been created by the deep state. Is that clear? So understanding the mindset and understanding the roots of the divisions of the conflict is very, very important. It's a very important analysis. See, we could have easily discussed only the basic facts, the history, and close this chapter, but that does not serve the purpose, right? Such analysis is very essential because it makes the topic more interesting and it makes other topics very easy and simple to understand. Because UPSC questions can come on these lines. There could be questions on why Pakistan sponsors terrorism against India, why Pakistan has used terrorism as a weapon, as a tool, right? There could be questions on the internal situation in Pakistan. So having this basic idea, at least at the basic level, will help you write good answers for these questions. All right. Now, let's look at how Pakistan has been hostile towards India consistently. Let's see the different disputes, issues, wars, and conflicts that we have between the two. So I've given the entire list over here, starting with the first war between India and Pakistan, the 1947 conflict. This war was about Kashmir. The second war, the 1965 war. Again, the war was about Kashmir. Then came 1971, which we have already studied, the liberation of Bangladesh war. Then we had a limited conflict over Kargil in 1999. Apart from these wars and conflicts, we have few standing disputes, the Siachen dispute and the Sir Creek dispute, which I was mentioning. And we also have the sustained covert proxy war of Pakistan against India, of using terrorism as a weapon against India. So these are the major standing issues that we have. Now let us study this one by one. Let's first focus on the Kashmir dispute and Kashmir conflict and talk about the first two wars, right? More than the war, it's the background that you should cover. It should become very easy for you guys to understand the nature of the Kashmir dispute, right? So that is something we'll focus upon. 1971 war I'll skip because we have already discussed and covered it, because this is not the place to cover the 1971 war. The 1971 war was all about Bangladesh. So we have already discussed and covered this under India Bangladesh. I'm sure many of you would have attended the class, remembered the discussion as well. So I've explained in detail what led to the crisis in East Pakistan and how India played a direct role in liberating Bangladesh. So let's not repeat that. Let's not waste time. Let's look at the Kashmir dispute. Let's briefly discuss the Kargil war as well and focus on the remaining issues and disputes. All right. So let's start with the Kashmir dispute. This is the biggest issue, the core issue between India and Pakistan. This is also the root cause of all the rivalries, the tensions between India and Pakistan post independence, right? Because see, right from 1947, right from the moment we gained independence, Pakistan has created multiple problems and challenges for India. First, we saw the horrors of partition, where large-scale communal violence broke out between extremists of all the sides. All right? Following this humanitarian disaster and the large-scale migration of refugees, Pakistan tried to meddle with the process of formation of the Indian Union. When the Indian Union was being formed, Pakistan was trying to disrupt the process. It was trying to encourage few princely states to join Pakistan, like Hyderabad, Junagadh, right? These were princely states that were part of the Indian territory itself. They were surrounded by Indian territory. But the then rulers, the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Nawab of Junagadh, they were trying to join the princely state with Pakistan. So Pakistan was encouraging these tendencies. This is what led India to annex Junagadh and Hyderabad, right? We had to carry out a military action right? And occupy Junagadh and Hyderabad and merge these areas, these territories into the Indian Union. Understood? This was possible for Pakistan to instigate the princely states because when the British granted independence, right, this was through the Indian Independence Act of 1947. Now, this act created two dominions, India and Pakistan, the Indian Dominion and Pakistani Dominion. Right? These were the dominions which would become independent countries. But there were hundreds of princely states under British India. So, what will happen to them? The princely states were given the option. Please note down this point, it's very, very important. Princely states had the option either to join India or even Pakistan, or they could even opt for remaining independent. They could stay away from both India, Pakistan, and choose independence as well. This was the option given to the princely states. Is that clear? If they wanted, they could sign the instrument of accession, join either of the dominions, or they could remain independent. But after India, Pakistan were born, the Indian leaders were very clear that we cannot afford many Pakistans coming up inside Indian territory. Now, just because the act allowed this, right, doesn't mean we would allow this to happen after becoming independent. Imagine having multiple enclaves of Pakistan inside India. Or imagine having Indian enclaves inside Pakistan as well, right? Both would have been nightmares. So the then Indian leaders, Prime Minister Nehru and Home Minister Sardar Patel and the others, they were very clear that we have to build a strong Indian Union. We have to bring all the regions together, convince many princely states to join the Indian Union. Because many princely states were hesitant. Because please understand, they are monarchies, they are monarchs. They knew that India would be a democracy, a constitutional democracy, which means that is the death of monarchy. They will lose their prestige, their power, their authority, their wealth. So obviously, monarchs were hesitant. For example, the king of Travancore. The king of Travancore was hesitant. The Vodayas of Mysore were also slightly hesitant to join India initially, right? Then various princely states in Madhya Pradesh, like Indore, Bhopal, even towards Rajasthan, some of the Rajput kingdoms, they were all hesitant to join India. They wanted to retain their monarchy, retain their powers, their wealth. In the northeast as well, right? So many princely states had this hesitation. Similarly, Junagadh and Hyderabad also had a hesitation. But problem with Junagadh and Hyderabad was that the Nawab of Junagadh and the Nizam of Hyderabad, they wanted to join Pakistan. And there is no connection. Geographically, they are not contiguous, right? Culturally, there is no connection as well. They ruled over Hindu majority areas. So there is no way that India could tolerate or allow these Pakistani enclaves to come up inside India. So India had to use multiple policies to convince, force, threaten, or capture these territories. In some cases, negotiations worked, like the various kingdoms in Madhya Pradesh, the southern parts of India, right? All these kingdoms, they just needed some convincing. So talks were opened, negotiations happened, and incentives were offered to them. The government promised incentives that you could retain certain part of your wealth. You could retain some titles. You can continue with some rituals that you perform. And government would provide a privy purse, meaning government would pay the royals of a certain incentive, right, which became a motivating factor for them. So such negotiations helped in convincing some of the princely states. Is that clear? So Sardar Patel and Nehru would play a critical role in negotiating with these princely states and convincing them to join India. But in some cases, it required it required threats, it required pressure, right? So some princely states were merged into India through a mix of threats and coercion. But some were not bending to either of them. So that is where military action was necessary. Like Junagadh had to be annexed through surrounding Junagadh by our forces, and Junagadh had to be annexed by India. Then we held a plebiscite as well. We held a direct election so that it will have legitimacy in front of the global community. Pakistan was constantly instigating the Nawab of Junagadh to merge Junagadh with Pakistan. Right? And Junagadh is in the middle of Gujarat, which means there would be a Pakistani enclave inside Gujarat. So India could not tolerate that. So through military action, India captured Junagadh and held an election as well, a plebiscite, so that it will have international legitimacy. Similarly, Hyderabad, Nizam of Hyderabad was hell-bent on joining Pakistan, and Pakistan was encouraging that. This was deliberate Pakistani interference in our internal matters. So as Hyderabad was showing the tendency, India launched a military operation again called Operation Polo. Through Operation Polo, which was a combined police military action, India captured Hyderabad, and that's how these areas became part of India. The reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because I want to highlight how Pakistan has meddled with our princely states, how it has tried creating different challenges for India, even with forming a strong Indian Union. Right? Now, one such place was Jammu and Kashmir, which was also a princely state. Jammu and Kashmir was ruled by the Dogras. The Dogra dynasty was in power. They had purchased Jammu and Kashmir from the British. Following the Anglo-Afghan wars and the settlement between the British and the Afghan warlords, right? Part of Jammu and Kashmir was under British control. They had sold it to the Dogras. So it was a Dogra princely state. Now J&K has a very unique demography, right? Kashmir is largely Muslim dominated. Jammu is largely Hindu dominated. And Ladakh, which at that point was a princely state of its own, was Buddhist dominated. Now that's a very unique demography, right? So Raja Hari Singh was the monarch of J&K from the Dogra clan. Raja Hari Singh, he evaluated his options. He realized that his interests and the interests of his subjects will not be served by joining Pakistan, and he also was hesitant to join India. Because from the beginning, Pakistan was becoming a theological state where minorities were being oppressed and targeted. So Raja Hari Singh feared that if J&K merged with Pakistan, religious minorities would be eliminated. They would be persecuted. He was also concerned about joining India because even though India was secular, eventually India would be a Hindu majority state. Right? Majority population would be Hindus. Plus, Raja Hari Singh would have to give up his authority. Right? He would no longer be the ruler if he merges with a democratic India. So given these circumstances, Raja Hari Singh opted for independence initially. Initially, he chose independence. He did not accede either to India or to Pakistan and opted for independence. So technically speaking, legally speaking, J&K was an independent country for a short period of time. It was neither part of India nor Pakistan. All right? So don't take offense to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is technically correct. J&K technically for a few months was independent because the legal heir, the legal monarch, according to the options given under Indian Independence Act, had opted for independence. Right? The act gave the option to either join India or Pakistan or choose independence. So Raja Hari Singh opted for independence to retain his own authority and to consider the interests of his own subjects. And as a result, J&K technically was independent. But this led Pakistan to keep its eyes on Kashmir. Given that Kashmir was a Muslim dominated region, blessed with resources, and it has a strategic location because J&K would be a connection to China and Central Asia. Right? Historically, Kashmir has been part of an important trade route between Indian subcontinent and Central Asia and China. So Pakistan obviously was motivated by all these factors. The religious factor, the economic and strategic factors as well. So Pakistan made an illegal attempt to capture Kashmir for itself without valid claims, without any valid historical claims. Pakistan made an illegal military attempt to take Kashmir by launching an operation known as Operation Gulmarg. This operation was backed by the Pakistani army, where they motivated few tribes in the region, in the Gilgit Baltistan region and in the Kashmir region, who had enmity with Raja Hari Singh. Because in the past, the Dogras had committed atrocities against few tribes, against few Muslim tribes in the tribal belt of the Kashmir Gilgit Baltistan region. Is that clear? There was targeted violence which had happened many years ago under the Dogra dynasty. So there was an amount of hatred that existed between the monarch and the tribal communities. So by arming them, by motivating them, and by giving arms to them, Pakistani army launched a tribal invasion. Pakistan projected this to the world as a tribal invasion carried out by the tribals on their own. In reality, Pakistan was backing them, supporting them secretly. Pakistani army soldiers would also be disguised as tribesmen. So they are called as Pakistani irregulars. So it was a mixture of tribal militants armed by Pakistan along with Pakistani soldiers who had joined their ranks. This invasion led to the capture of several key territories in J&K. Raja Hari Singh couldn't stand up to the threat, right? His princely state and his limited armed forces could never withstand this threat from Pakistan. This was a massive invasion, and very quickly, by September, October 1947, right? Several territories in J&K, including large parts of Kashmir and some parts of Jammu, were captured by these irregular forces from Pakistan. Later, Pakistani army would formally join this conflict, trying to cement the Pakistani position and trying to take this area entirely to merge it with Pakistan. So essentially, J&K was on the brink of collapse. In a matter of few days or weeks, J&K would have been completely taken over by Pakistan. At this point, Raja Hari Singh approached India for help. He asked India to assist. He reached out to Nehru, Sardar Patel, and Lord Mountbatten, right, who was still the Governor General. Reached out to them and asked India to help provide military assistance. And India agreed to help based on one condition. India's condition was Raja Hari Singh has to give up his claim. He has to sign the instrument of accession, merge J&K with India. If he agrees to the accession of J&K into India, then India will come to the defense of J&K and fight this war against Pakistan. So Raja Hari Singh had no other choice. Either he had to see the collapse of his state, right, collapse of his rule, or take help from India and merge J&K with India. So it was at this point that Raja Hari Singh signed the instrument of accession, thus formally merging Jammu and Kashmir with India. All right? Even though Pakistani irregulars had taken some territories, the whole state of J&K as it existed prior to independence belongs to India because the legitimate authority of J&K was Raja Hari Singh. He was still the legitimate monarch. So under the Indian Independence Act, Raja Hari Singh still had the authority to cede J&K to India. Right? Even though Pakistani forces had invaded, that was an illegal invasion. Even though they had captured some territories, the whole state of J&K as it existed, the princely state, including Gilgit-Baltistan areas, they technically legally belong to India. So that is why India's legal position is absolutely correct. We insist that the whole territory of J&K, the princely state, belongs to India. Right? We claim Gilgit-Baltistan as well because Raja Hari Singh signed the accession, the instrument of accession, merging the entire state with India. Right? The Pakistani invasion is irrelevant here. So legally, according to the Indian Independence Act, the entire state of J&K should belong to India. But once the instrument of accession was signed, India went to war. The first war broke out. India deployed troops to counter the Pakistani invasion, and we took back some of the occupied areas. Some of the occupied areas in Jammu and Kashmir was taken back by Indian troops. All right. So India managed to push back the Pakistani invaders, and we took back some of the occupied territories. But please understand, this was a period of immense challenges for both India and Pakistan. We were barely prepared for such wars and conflicts. The British had barely left us with anything, right? Forget armed forces. We barely had enough food left for us. There were multiple other challenges. Kashmir was not the only issue at that point. There were many other challenges. Northeast insurgency had broken out. Naga insurgency had started. Other princely states were creating problems in joining the Indian Union. There were massive economic challenges, shortage of food. We didn't have even basic industries. We had to depend on imports for all essential items, right? So there were grave economic, social, and political challenges. So, given the circumstances, India decided that we can't go on forever with this war. The war had already lasted a couple of months, from around November till January, from 1947 to 1948. The war was already dragging. And also understand, J&K is a very complex terrain, complex geography. It's the Himalayan mountain ranges. And back then, Indian armed forces were not so well equipped, right? We didn't have the best equipment, the best airlift capabilities, barely any connectivity existed. So it's not easy to continue this war. It wasn't easy to go take all the areas back, right? It would have been economically and practically very challenging for the Indian forces. So at this point, what India did was we called for a ceasefire. We called for a ceasefire to prevent further damage, to prevent further economic losses, losses of soldiers. And since the war could not be prolonged, we placed faith in a newly created international organization, that is the UN, and we took the matter to the United Nations. This was a call of Prime Minister Nehru. Prime Minister Nehru, he called for a ceasefire. India called for a ceasefire to hold the positions. We had taken back some of the occupied areas, and we took the matter to the United Nations. This is where Prime Minister Nehru faces a lot of criticism, right? There are many who criticize Prime Minister Nehru for taking the matter to the UN. Many who argue that we should have continued the war and taken back all the occupied areas, right? So definitely, if you are looking at it from one angle, it can be seen as a mistake, a policy mistake that was made. Because India would realize the mistake later. Initially, we had placed faith in the UN. Later, we would realize that we would never get a fair solution through the UN. So from one perspective, definitely it looks like a policy mistake. But if you look at it from the other angle, understand the circumstances of that era. See, it's easy to look back and point out and say something was right, something was wrong. In that context, in those circumstances, for India, the correct approach appeared to be calling for a ceasefire and taking the matter to the UN. Because as I told you, we didn't want to further drain our limited economic resources. We didn't want to suffer further losses. We didn't want to take the risk because the Indian forces were not equipped, were not trained, were not well prepared. Connectivity, terrain, the climate of the region was very hostile for the troops. The winter season had approached, and dragging and continuing the war would have had disastrous consequences on the soldiers and also on the economy, right? And this was not the only issue. Please understand, there were many, many pressing challenges that needed immediate attention, right? We were a new country left behind by the British with tremendous problems and challenges. And UN was a newly created institution after the Second World War, and many leaders and countries had hope that UN would play a neutral, positive role in solving conflicts. In fact, if you look at the UN Charter, India was part of framing the UN Charter. That is one reason why the Indian government placed faith in the UN. Nehru placed faith in the UN. Because India was part of the drafting of the UN Charter, and one of the goals of the UN was to resolve conflicts peacefully. Resolve conflicts through peaceful methods, through negotiations. So by placing faith in this institution, right, India called for a ceasefire as we couldn't continue the war as well, right? We wanted a peaceful settlement to the conflict, and we took the matter to the United Nations. So whatever position we held, right, whatever line that India Pakistan held, this would later become the ceasefire line that was codified under the Karachi Agreement of 1949. Even today, it's the same positions that we hold. When ceasefire was called in 1947-48, which ended the 1947 war, the first war, it is the same exact position India-Pakistan hold even today. This was called the ceasefire line through the Karachi Agreement. It would remain the ceasefire line from 1949 till 1971. Understood? Now, when we took the matter to the UN, we were hoping for a fair solution, a fair settlement. But this is where India felt betrayed. India realized that UN was simply another political body. It was just another useless political body which had been politicized by the P5 countries, the 5 permanent members. The 5 permanent members, with their veto power, they were simply using the UN to play their own geopolitics. Especially the British, they sided with Pakistan on the issue. The US also tacitly gave backing to Pakistan, sidelining India's interests. Now, why would they do that? This policy of the Western countries was driven by the Cold War mindset. The Cold War rivalries had started between US and Soviet Union. As India was neutral and later we became non-aligned in 1950s, Pakistan, on the other hand, clearly aligned with the West. Pakistan got very close to the British. It signed a military treaty as well, a military agreement. It joined a military club as well, which was aligned with Western powers. So Pakistan became a military ally to the West, whereas India was neutral and looking to champion the non-aligned approach. Also, the British, right? Inherently, they always had an inclination to Pakistan than India. This was all because of the colonial hatred that was left behind, right? So at the UN, there was a clear bias against India. There was a clear bias in favor of Pakistan, and this is where India rejected UN's approach. Prime Minister Nehru realized that a mistake had happened, that we shouldn't have taken the matter to the UN. But this was a post-realization. This is where the criticism comes in. So India decided immediately that somehow we have to end the role of the UN. We have to take out UN's role in this conflict. Since then, India made attempts, since the times of Nehru till Indira Gandhi, attempts were made to remove the role of the UN in the Kashmir issue. All right? But then, in 1948, the UN upheld the ceasefire that India had declared. The ceasefire line was cemented in 1949 through Karachi Agreement. And both the sides were made to promise that a plebiscite would be held. In both sides of Kashmir that were under India and Pakistan, a plebiscite was promised by both the countries at the UN. Plebiscite is a direct election, a direct referendum. Plebiscites are held in conflicted areas, in disputed areas, to decide sovereignty. Whether the disputed area should belong to country A or country B, or should it remain independent. So the local people of that region, they will vote. They will cast a vote. We held a plebiscite in Junagadh when we annexed Junagadh. Right? Of course, majority of them voted for India. So that's how Junagadh merged with India. So here as well in Jammu and Kashmir, plebiscite was promised by India and Pakistan. We promised the UN to hold a plebiscite. But India was not comfortable with this solution, with the ceasefire line that was drawn, the plebiscite promise that was extracted, and the UN gave itself a role. This is what India didn't like. The UN established a military observer group. A UN military observer group was established to give UN a role in monitoring the ceasefire line. The UN stationed a military observer group in India and Pakistan. All right. So UN officials would be stationed in both sides of Kashmir and they would monitor whether the ceasefire commitment is being upheld by both the sides. Now, India didn't want any such interference. But at that point, we had to accept because we had approached UN for a solution, right? And we couldn't have simply broken the treaty. So the Karachi agreement was worked out. The ceasefire line became the temporary de facto border, and the UN military observer groups were set up where UN started playing a role in monitoring the ceasefire line and in monitoring the Kashmir conflict. So India was trying to eliminate the role of the UN, right? So eventually we managed to do that. On the other hand, the plebiscite question, that was becoming a challenge. We had promised a plebiscite, but India realized that plebiscite will never be fair. We saw that Pakistan was trying to change the demography to swing any elections in its favor. Pakistan was trying to change the demography of POK, of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Basically, it was bringing people from other parts, from Punjab, from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, and trying to populate POK so that if a plebiscite is held, they will all vote in favor of Pakistan. This was a manipulation that Pakistan was doing, right? So India was convinced that a free and fair election will never happen. A free and fair plebiscite cannot happen, as Pakistan is already meddling with the population of POK. So India decided we will never hold a plebiscite, no matter what. India rejected the plebiscite, and till date we haven't held the plebiscite. And same with Pakistan. As India rejected the plebiscite, even Pakistan has never held a plebiscite. So this promised plebiscite has never been held by both the sides. So the ceasefire continued. The ceasefire line became the temporary de facto boundary, and the UN kept monitoring the ceasefire through its military observer groups stationed in India and Pakistan. Now, for India to get full control, the last challenge was removing the role of the UN. Now that India felt betrayed by the British, by the US, and by the UN, we were waiting for an opportunity to throw UN out of the Kashmir issue. And this opportunity opened up for India, as you know, in 1971. India got a great opportunity in 1971, and we leveraged it to our advantage. The liberation of Bangladesh war ended with the Shimla Agreement of 1972. And under the Shimla Agreement, one of the commitments that we extracted from Pakistan was to rename the ceasefire line. The ceasefire line was renamed as the line of control, the LOC. Now you might ask, what's the big deal about changing the name? What will happen because of that? This is the beauty of diplomacy. Even though it was a technical legal change on paper, it has great significance because UN military observer group was created to monitor the ceasefire line under Karachi Agreement. If there is no ceasefire line, if we erase the ceasefire line itself and name it something else, legally speaking, UN military observer group has nothing to monitor. All right, this is a clever play of words. This is a very clever strategy by India. We leveraged the opportunity of the liberation of Bangladesh war. We had conclusively defeated Pakistan, broken the country into two parts. We held 93,000 Pakistani soldiers as prisoners of war. Right? We had all the advantage. Using this advantage, we forced Pakistan to accept that we will resolve Kashmir dispute or any dispute bilaterally. We ensured that Pakistan made a commitment that there will be no third-party involvement in our bilateral issues and disputes. Meaning no other country will be involved, no organization will be involved. So Pakistan, once it gave the commitment, right, it means we cannot entertain or we will not entertain any involvement of a third country or a third organization. So along with agreeing to settle disputes bilaterally and eliminating third-party role, Pakistan agreed for renaming ceasefire line as line of control, and this renaming would eliminate the role of UN military observer group. It eliminated the role of UN military observer groups stationed in India. Even today, the military observer groups are present, but we don't allow them to function. They have no role to play anymore, according to India, because there is no ceasefire line anymore to monitor. Today, it's the line of control, the LOC, which is the temporary de facto border. So on the ground, nothing has changed. On the ground, whatever position we held in 1947, 48, the same position is held even today by Indian and Pakistani troops. Only change is that the name has been changed. On paper, on maps, the name has been changed. So without a ceasefire line of Karachi agreement, what will the military observer group monitor? Right? That is how UN role has been cleverly eliminated, and we extracted a commitment from Pakistan that any dispute will be resolved bilaterally with no third party involvement. So with this, India managed to get back some control over the Kashmir issue, and since then we have strongly insisted that any future resolution of Kashmir dispute will be decided bilaterally. Only India, Pakistan will decide what will happen to Kashmir, not anyone else. Not China, not US, not Britain, not UN. Is that clear? So this is the position, the stand that India took, and it has been cemented through the Shimla Agreement. Then, if you look at the 1965 war, this was the second Pakistani attempt to capture Kashmir. It was a repeat of 1947 in a way. After failing in the first attempt, Pakistan would not give it up because Kashmir became an obsession. India became an obsession. The Pakistani elite, they needed these causes to build their own profile, to gain the loyalty of their subjects. Kashmir became their favorite obsession. By trying to back the Kashmir cause and by trying to capture Kashmir for itself, it rallied support and it went to war with India again by launching Operation Gibraltar. Operation Gibraltar was a Pakistani army operation to try and capture territories in Kashmir to cement its position in the region. It was the second Pakistani attempt to capture territories in Kashmir. Right? A Pakistani invasion started again under Operation Gibraltar, and immediately India went to war against Pakistan. The Prime Minister was Lal Bahadur Shastri at this point, right? And under the able leadership of Shastriji, India went to war, the second war, and this became a full-fledged conflict. The previous war had been limited only to Kashmir. The 1947 war was only limited to Kashmir. The war didn't spread to other parts of the border. In 1947, war did not break out along the Punjab-Rajasthan border or Gujarat border or the borders with East Pakistan. The 1947 war was limited only to Kashmir. But the second war was different. The second war spread very quickly. It wasn't limited only to Kashmir. It spread to the borders along Punjab, Rajasthan and Gujarat. Pakistan again blames India for the war. Pakistan's theory is that it was India which attacked Pakistan in Gujarat sector, in the Sar Creek, Run of Kutch sector. But there is no evidence to support that theory. It's Pakistan which caused the invasion under Operation Gibraltar, and India was retaliating to defend its territory. So this triggered a full blown out war involving Indian Army, Indian Air Force. Both played a critical role, and this war ended as a stalemate. If you look at it neutrally, from a neutral perspective, right, the war was actually a stalemate. Neither side achieved anything. All right. But from the perspective of India, India won the war. From Pakistan's perspective, Pakistan also won the war. That's how interpretations are. It's highly subjective, right? It depends on where you stand and look at the issue from. In such conflicts where there are no clear results, no conclusive results, usually both sides will claim victory. All right. That's why it said victors write history, right? And Pakistan writes its own version of history, and India also claims victory in this conflict. If you look at it neutrally, it was actually a stalemate. Nothing changed on the ground. Neither India lost territory nor did we gain any territory. So in that regard, it was a stalemate. But India's position at least is slightly correct because we defeated Pakistan's objective. Now, why did Pakistan go to war? What was the purpose of Operation Gibraltar? to capture territories in Kashmir. Did Pakistan manage to do that? No. We prevented that from happening. We defended our territory successfully and pushed back the invasion, which means India won the war. So that in that regard, India's position is correct. So this war came to an end with the signing of the Tashkent Agreement. Tashkent at that point was in Soviet Union. All right. Today it's part of Tajikistan. So at Tashkent, a conference was called at the mediation of Soviet Union. So the Indian and Pakistani leaders were invited, and a mediated settlement was worked out, which formally ended the Second War. So Soviet Union acted as a neutral mediator to bring this Second War to an end between India and Pakistan. So after signing the Tashkent Agreement, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri passed away, and there is a whole lot of conspiracy theory surrounding his death. Right? I know that. I know you'd look to ask questions on that as well. But trust me, don't go into that. It remains a conspiracy theory. There has never been any concrete evidence to indicate otherwise. Even if it's otherwise, there is nothing to prove. So don't go into it. UPSC will not bother you about it. Right? I know it all sounds very fascinating, very interesting, but it's not needed for the exam. As simple as that. All right? So don't look at conspiracy theories. They don't help you in any way for the exam. Stay away from that. So the Second War came to an end with the signing of the Tashkent Treaty, or the Tashkent Agreement. The Third War came to an end with Shimla Agreement. Now, the Kargil conflict of 1999. Kargil conflict was designed, engineered by the Pakistani army under the leadership of Pervez Musharraf. When the war happened, right, the Prime Minister was Nawaz Sharif. There was a civilian elected government. The army chief was Pervez Musharraf. The army, as always, wanted to undermine the civilian government because Nawaz Sharif had started reaching out to India, and especially India had started reaching out to Pakistan. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Vajpayee, a genuine, honest attempt was made to repair the relationship. Right? The Pakistani army had its own designs. Pervez Musharraf was personally involved in the planning of the Kargil intrusion. Under his directions, the Pakistani troops were ordered to capture the Kargil Heights, which is a strategic region. In the Kargil Dras Batalic sector, key locations, key peaks, and mountain tops were occupied by Pakistani troops, and the Indian establishment went completely unaware regarding these developments. There was a colossal intelligence failure on India's part. There was a massive failure on the part of the Indian Army, Research and Analysis Wing, Intelligence Bureau. Our intelligence agencies and armed forces, the Indian Army, they have failed colossally in detecting the Pakistani presence. This should have been detected. All right. For several weeks, there had been Pakistani mobilization, and discreetly they had occupied key locations in the Kargil Dras Batalic sector. By the time the occupation came to light, it was already too late. Pakistan had advantageous positions. Given that significant territory had been captured, Prime Minister Vajpayee had no other option but to declare war. But it was not a full-fledged war again. It was a limited conflict. Prime Minister Vajpayee's directions were very clear. Our objective is to clear the intrusion. We are going to focus only on Kargil and Dras Batalic, nothing else. Will not expand the war, not even to other parts of J&K, not to Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat border. We will not even cross our airspace, will not enter Pakistani airspace. He gave strict orders to the Indian Air Force to not enter even 1 inch into the Pakistani airspace. The goal was to remove the intruders from these occupied areas and take back Indian territory. This triggered the Kargil conflict, right? India eventually succeeded in throwing out the Pakistani intruders with a successful operation led by the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. For the Indian army, it was a very challenging task because the Pakistani troops, they held advantageous positions at the top. So for Indian troops to move up the mountains and fight this mountainous battle was a very, very challenging battle for the Indian troops. So that's the reason why we suffered significant losses. We suffered a lot of losses because India was at a disadvantageous position. The Indian troops were in a disadvantageous position. But this is where Indian Air Force compensated for it. It managed to deliver precision bombs thanks to Israel, which delivered laser guided bombs and other precision targeted bombs. The Indian Air Force precisely bombed these positions held by Pakistani invaders and cleared these areas, and we retook all the occupied areas in Kargil, Dras, and Batalik. India won the war conclusively, and it was a defeat for Pakistan. All right. Following this, eventually, Nawaz Sharif himself was thrown out, and Pervez Musharraf carried out a military coup. He captured power and became a dictator. He emerged as the president of Pakistan through a military coup by throwing out Nawaz Sharif from power. The 1990s was a very tense period between India and Pakistan. Honestly, the Vajpayee administration has dealt with very challenging circumstances. One of the biggest challenges was, of course, the testing of nuclear weapons. India carried out the Pokhran tests. India carried out the Pokhran tests in 98, which established India as a nuclear power. Immediately, Pakistan retaliated within 2 weeks by conducting its own nuclear tests. So this essentially triggered a nuclear arms race between the two countries, and serious tensions started escalating between India and Pakistan. Is that clear? Because both India and Pakistan had developed nuclear weapons outside of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. India and Pakistan have never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty because Non-Proliferation Treaty is discriminatory. It does not allow any country other than P5 countries to develop nuclear weapons. Only P5 countries are allowed to retain their nuclear weapons according to Non-Proliferation Treaty. So only China, US, then Britain, France, and Russia, only they can have nuclear weapons, no one else. So India, Pakistan wanted to retain the option, so they've never signed NPT. Same with Israel. These three countries have deliberately chosen not to sign Non-Proliferation Treaty. All right. So when we tested the nuclear weapons, it was outside of international law. In a way, we had broken international law. That is why we were targeted with economic and technological sanctions. Western countries and even China and others, they collectively imposed economic technological sanctions on India and Pakistan as we had developed nuclear weapons outside of the international framework. Right? So this was the situation where a nuclear arms race had been triggered on one hand. The power balance had been altered in South Asia, and Western countries and others, including China, US, Japan, European countries, they all imposed economic technological sanctions. So this was a difficult, challenging period for us. All right. So Pakistan's nuclear program was largely backed by China. China has played a direct role in Pakistan's nuclear program. In a way, China has used Pakistan as a proxy to destabilize India, to target India. Especially after the 1962 war between India and China, a nexus has developed between China and Pakistan, where China has directly helped in the military modernization of Pakistan. All the major weapon platforms Pakistan has today, they're all of Chinese origin. Be it Pakistani ballistic missiles, be it its nuclear weapons program, some of its fighter jets, submarines, and other key platforms, they're all of Chinese origin and Chinese design. China breached global commitments towards non-proliferation and leaked nuclear secrets and nuclear material to Pakistan to help Pakistan become a nuclear power. China covertly helped Pakistan to become a nuclear power, right? And Pakistan has been a rogue state in the nuclear field. It has leaked nuclear secrets. It has sold nuclear material in the black market. If Iran, North Korea, Libya, they all started nuclear programs, It's because of Pakistan. Pakistani scientists such as AQ Khan, right? AQ Khan was seen as the father of Pakistan's nuclear program. But later he was exposed that he was running a black market, leaking nuclear secrets and nuclear material to other rogue countries like North Korea, Iran, and Libya, and others. So Pakistan has been a proliferator of nuclear technology and nuclear secrets. China has enabled this to happen, right? And this is where India faces a unique challenge when it comes to China and Pakistan. All right? The nuclear angle always creates a challenge for India. It did give us deterrence against China, but it did create problems with Pakistan. Pakistan also gets a deterrence with India. It gets an advantageous position against India because it possesses nuclear weapons. So definitely the testing of nuclear weapons altered the balance of power. The balance of power got altered in the region. India got deterrence against China. We could deter any Chinese threats. Similarly, Pakistan got more deterrence against India as it could deter Indian threats. Apart from this, there were other tensions as well. There were series of terror attacks that were happening. There was hijacking of a plane, the IC-814 hijacking. We studied this under India-Nepal, if you remember. Right? There were a series of bomb blasts and terror incidents that were happening. By this time, Pakistan had sponsored major acts of terrorism against India, including the Khalistan movement and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. We are going to study this after the break. After a short break, we are going to study Pakistan. Understand the is considered as the world's highest battlefield. It's also the world's most expensive battlefield. The Siachen Glacier is a strategic region which is located between India, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and China. This triangular region that you see here in the map to the north of Kashmir, this is where you find the Siachen Glacier. You can also see the Nubra and Shok River that originate from here, right? Now, this location that you are seeing here is a vital location, a strategic location, because to the to the west of Siachen, you have POK, the Pakistan occupied territories. You can see the Baltoro Glacier. This here would be Gilgit-Baltistan. You can also see the Saltoro Ridge that marks a vital position where Indian and Pakistani troops hold a presence on both the sides. You also see the temporary border, the de facto border here, the line of control, right? This is where the line of control comes to an end. The northernmost point of LOC is called point NJ9842. All right, please mark this location. Point NJ9842 marks the northernmost point of the line of control. This is where the temporary border ends. Beyond this, the boundaries have not been demarcated. There is no clarity on how the boundaries will be settled in this border. So the Siachen region, which has been of great strategic significance, has been eyed by both India and Pakistan. Until 1984, both India and Pakistan maintained a military presence. They maintained a military presence, especially during the summer season, the summer months, where the weather is more hospitable in this region. Until 1984, both the countries had a tacit understanding. There was a agreement between the two sides that they will withdraw troops during the winters where the snowfall makes it extremely dangerous for the troops to remain. Because in that era, given the equipment, the clothing, right, it was very challenging to maintain troops here during the winter season. Because at Siachen, the conditions can be very harsh. The terrain, the geography itself is very complex. There's no connectivity as well, no land connectivity. Only way you can reach and access is through helicopters, right? So providing supplies to your troops becomes a big challenge. Along with the difficult geography, the weather conditions are very challenging. The temperatures drop to minus 20, minus 30 degrees Celsius. So maintaining troops at such a position is very challenging for any country. But given the importance of the location and given that the boundaries were not settled here, both India and Pakistan were maintaining a military presence here until 1984. But the agreement between the two was that we would maintain troops in the summer, maintain our positions, and both sides will withdraw during the winters. This was largely on humanitarian grounds because in such harsh conditions, there are many risks to the soldiers. They will suffer from frostbite, they will suffer from hypothermia. Many soldiers have been killed on both sides because of hypothermia, where your core body temperature plummets, causing, causing the death of the person. They even suffer from avalanches. Avalanches are very common in this region, and both sides have lost considerable amount of soldiers due to these natural incidents. But in 1984, Pakistan made an attempt to try and occupy the whole of Siachen to itself. Because if you look at the other side of Siachen, to the north of Siachen, you can see the Shaksgam Valley over here, which was also part of POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. The Shaksgam Valley is another strategic location because it connects Gilgit Baltistan with the Xinjiang province of China. Is that clear? The Shaksgam Valley provides a direct link here from Gilgit Baltistan towards Xinjiang. So after the 1962 war with China, Pakistan started getting closer to each other. They formed a strategic nexus against India. And in 1963, they signed a boundary agreement, the Sino-Pak Boundary Agreement in 1963. And through this agreement, Pakistan gave away Shaksgam Valley to China. Pakistan has ceded Indian territory. These are all Indian territories claimed by India, which is under the illegal occupation of Pakistan, right? So Shaksgam Valley was given away to China, and China maintains its own presence in Shaksgam Valley today. The Chinese PLA soldiers can be found in Shaksgam Valley, which is Indian territory taken by Pakistan, right? China has built many key projects via the Shaksgam Valley. It has built roads and railway lines to further improve connectivity with Pakistan. And its most ambitious project, the CPEC corridor, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is part of the Belt and Road Initiative, passes via the Shaksgam Valley through these occupied areas. That is the reason why we have rejected the CPEC project. India has opposed Belt and Road Initiative. We have boycotted the BRI summits held by China because the CPEC project violates our sovereignty. These are areas claimed by India. We say that Pakistan has illegally occupied these territories and breached our sovereignty. So this Indian territory has been ceded by Pakistan to China through their own boundary agreement signed in 1963. So China has made considerable investments, deployed troops as well, and now it is executing the Belt and Road Initiative and furthering the projects linked with CPEC corridor. So this China-Pakistan nexus has been a challenge for India, and that further increases the strategic significance of Siachen Glacier. Because given the altitude of the region, right, and given its location, the one who dominates Siachen will get better access and better view of all the surrounding areas, be it the Saltoro, Baltoro region, be it Shaksgam Valley, or even Aksai Chin over here. This side would be Aksai Chin, which is under the illegal occupation of China. China has occupied Aksai Chin, right? We'll study this in the next chapter, in India-China chapter. It's part of the Ladakh region, but China has taken this, and since 1962, China has firmly captured Aksai Chin for itself. So Given the presence of these three countries here, India, China, and Pakistan, Siachen becomes strategically very, very important. So in 1984, Pakistan tried to betray this commitment. It tried to backstab India again. That's been a repeat pattern of Pakistan. It tried to backtrack on this agreement, and it was planning a preemptive operation, a military operation to take Siachen for itself, to occupy the vantage points when Indian troops would have been withdrawn. Because in the winter, Indian troops would not be present. We would have withdrawn the troops. And Pakistan was looking to betray India, to breach the commitment, and use this opportunity where Indian troops are absent to come and occupy the valuable positions in Siachen so that it could dominate the Siachen area. But fortunately, India's raw research and analysis wing would pick up intelligence regarding this Pakistani preparations that were going on. RAW station in London received a valuable intelligence input from a European defense manufacturer that Pakistan had placed a massive order for Arctic warfare equipment. The Pakistani army had placed a very big order for Arctic warfare equipment. Specialized weapons and specialized clothing gear were ordered, which would basically be used by the troops to set up camp in such inhospitable conditions. So, this intelligence that India received in Europe was the critical aspect of the Siachen issue. Once RAW received this input, the Indian strategic establishment started analyzing the intelligence. The defense ministry, the army, the prime minister's office, right, and all the concerned agencies, even the Ministry of External Affairs, they would all try to assess as to why Pakistan was placing such a massive order for Arctic warfare equipment. The only conclusion was that Pakistan might try to capture Siachen for itself. It might be using the equipment to plan this preemptive operation and capture the Siachen heights when Indian troops are not present at Siachen. So, based on this assessment, it was clear that if India did not act, Pakistan would gain an upper hand. Because once a country captures Siachen and dominates the region, it would be impossible for the other country to take it back. Given the harsh geography and the climate here, it becomes very, very challenging to fight a battle here and take back Siachen. So, based on this assessment, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered a military operation called Operation Meghdoot. Operation Meghdoot was ordered by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and this would be India's preemptive operation to take Siachen before Pakistan could even make the attempt. And what is interesting and even ironic is that India, after learning about Pakistan's plans, would place a similar order from the same company, from the same European defense manufacturer. And we managed to get the order before Pakistan, right? So this involved a lot of diplomatic efforts and also efforts from RAW to ensure that we got the consignment on time before Pakistan could. So after procuring similar Arctic gear, right, the Indian Army executed one of the most challenging operations. It was a preemptive operation to take Siachen before Pakistan could make its attempt. All right. So this is one of the most daring military operations of the Indian Army. And Operation Meghdoot was a very big success. As planned, Indian Army troops, they trekked to Siachen, and that too in the winter season, and they managed to establish dominating positions. So when later Pakistani troops came in, right, they were shocked, they were surprised to find the permanent presence of India. So it was through Operation Meghdoot that India captured Siachen for itself, and even today we retain the most dominating positions at Siachen. Since then, we have maintained a permanent presence throughout the year. We don't withdraw troops anymore. Pakistan also has maintained permanent presence, but at lower heights. At the lower heights of the Saltoro Ridge, even Pakistan maintains a permanent presence, but India occupies all the dominating heights. The key vantage points are under India's control. But maintaining this military presence is very expensive. See, at Siachen, there has never been a war. There has never been any battle as such. Even in Operation Meghdoot, There was no battle involved. Operation Meghdut was about preemptively capturing Siachen and establishing our military presence. So, without fire being opened, without battles being fought here, both the sides have lost a number of soldiers, mainly due to the conditions, due to avalanches, hypothermia, etc. So, there have been discussions in the past to try and demilitarize Siachen, given that both sides are spending crores of rupees every single day to maintain the troops here, right? This is a drain of resources. It's literally a cold desert, right? If things were better between India and Pakistan, ideally we shouldn't be spending so much on maintaining troops over here. Also, the human cost is very high. Both sides have lost several soldiers. India has lost hundreds of soldiers here, even Pakistan, right? So attempts have been made to negotiate the Siachen issue and try to demilitarize the region, to try and work out an agreement where both troops will be withdrawn and this will become a demilitarized zone. Like there is a demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, something like that. But these discussions have never gone forward because India is very clear that we can't trust Pakistan on this. The defense ministry, the Indian army, they strongly oppose any demilitarization. And across the Indian government, there is an agreement. Everyone agrees that Pakistan cannot be trusted on this. Tomorrow, even if you sign an agreement to demilitarize Siachen and achieve a resolution of the dispute, right? You can't trust Pakistan to uphold it because Pakistan has a history of backstabbing India and betraying India on its commitments. It has made hundreds of promises, and every time it has broken each and every promise. So, tomorrow, if we were to demilitarize Siachen and later Pakistan were to capture Siachen for itself, then it would become near impossible for Indian army to take Siachen back. Given the complex geography and the difficulties involved, it would become very challenging to take Siachen back. So, as a result, the Indian government has dropped any discussion on demilitarization of Siachen. The idea was considered around 20 years ago. Some discussions happened as well. But in the last 15 to 18 years, India is very clear that we are not going to give up Siachen. We are not going to demilitarize Siachen. Understood? So this remains a standing dispute. It's a disputed area, but it remains under Indian control. Completely, almost completely under Indian control. So the line of control ends here at the tip of Siachen at point NJ9842. The line of control ends. After that, there are no demarcated boundaries, and this whole triangular glacier area is under Indian control. So this is about the Siachen dispute. Next, what is the Sir Creek dispute? The Sir Creek dispute is actually a very minor dispute. Strategic experts say that this is one of the low-hanging fruits in the relationship. It's believed that it's easier to work out a solution for this if Pakistan behaves like a mature country. It's easy to resolve the dispute and provide for betterment of relations because this is not a very complex issue. Whereas other issues like the Kashmir dispute, it's a very complicated issue. There may not be a solution for Kashmir issue in the immediate or in the short term, right? The Kashmir issue will remain as it is for many more years or many more decades as well. Given the state of relations between India and Pakistan, it's unlikely that we will find a solution for Kashmir dispute. But Sir Creek dispute is something that can be resolved very easily with the right efforts, with some maturity from both sides, especially Pakistan. This issue can definitely be resolved. So let's see what is the Sir Creek dispute. Sir Creek is an estuary located here. It's in the Kutch region, the Kutch and the Sindh region. It's between the Kutch region of Gujarat. This is the Indian side, right? And this is the Pakistani side. This is the Sindh province. This is the state of Gujarat. And this is where the international border is present, the IB. So as you know, IB is a permanent border. It's a settled boundary. We have no disputes along the IB. But at the last tip, where IB is supposed to meet with Arabian Sea, where we are supposed to have the maritime boundaries, there is a standing dispute at this estuary called Sir Creek. This is part of the Indus Basin itself. All right, there are multiple streams that drain into Bay of Bengal, and Sir Creek marks the boundary between India and Pakistan. Now, the problem here is that Pakistan has an unreasonable position. See, this water channel, which you can see here in the map, this is the Sir Creek area. All right, this entire water channel is the Sir Creek estuary. Now, India's position is very simple and it's in line with international law. India wants a fair division of Sir Creek. We want established principles of UN Convention on Law of the Sea to be followed, and we want the Talweg doctrine or the Talweg principle recognized by UN clause to be implemented. So, what is the Talweg principle? According to Talweg principle of drawing boundaries in the maritime domain, if there is a water body that marks the boundary between two countries, let's say this is country A, this is country B, and between the two countries there is a water body which is marking the boundary. In that case, according to Talweg principle, which is given recognition under the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, the border should pass in the middle of the navigation channel. The border should pass in the middle of the navigation channel, which means both the sides will get an equal share. Both the sides will get a fair share. It will not be unfair to either of the parties. This is what Talweg principle provides for. It is a recognized international principle. It has validity under UN Convention on Law of the Sea. In the maritime areas, when such water bodies are present along the boundary, Talweg principle is applied by countries. All right? The boundary will pass in between the navigation channel, so both sides will get an equal share. So this is what India is asking for. India is not greedy. We are not expansionist power. Right? We are asking for what is fair, what is recognized under international law. So that is the claim of India. You can see the claim line of India over here, the orange line. This is the claim of India. Can you observe the orange dotted line that's passing in between? This is the claim line of India. We are not asking for Pakistani territory. We're just asking for a fair settlement so that it's fair to both India and Pakistan. But Pakistan dismisses this. Pakistan has a counterclaim. It is claiming the entire Sir Creek to itself. In violation of Talweg principle, it's claiming the whole Sir Creek region to itself. The green line here, the green dotted line, represents the Pakistani claim. So as you can see, it's towards India, meaning it wants the whole Sir Creek to belong to Pakistan. And this, of course, is unacceptable to India. Then that would be unfair. It would be an unfair division. And this could have an impact on the maritime boundaries as well that would be drawn in the Arabian Sea. Right? So India is insisting that we should sit, negotiate, and work out a solution. But Pakistan is hell-bent that it wants the whole Sir Creek to itself. So that is why this remains a standing dispute. And also the geography here is also again very complicated. The whole Kutch area, the run of Kutch, is a marshy area. It's a wetland. It's a marshy wetland. And there are many challenges India has been facing with regard to border security. See, from India, it's the BSF, which is the border guarding force. The border security force is responsible for guarding India-Pakistan border. From Kashmir till Gujarat, it's BSF which is responsible, right? So the BSF has found this area to be very challenging because it's a marshy wetland. There are multiple water channels. It's not easy to patrol. It has even procured few motorboats and other navigable vessels in order to carry out border patrolling. But from the Pakistani side, there has been constant infiltration and smuggling and trafficking through this route. Organized crime has been a major concern for India. Infiltration and trafficking, smuggling is constantly noticed across this region. Several drug cartels, they use the route to smuggle drugs. They even push weapons as well from here. right? Even human infiltration has been noticed. So BSF is facing a very big challenge in terms of border security, and hence India wants this boundary to be settled so we can better secure this area. All right. There is a channel here called Harami Nala, which was recently in news. The Harami Nala is known for being exploited by the criminal outfits, the organized criminal outfits, which get support from the Pakistani state. Pakistani state agencies, they give support to criminal cartels to carry out the smuggling and infiltration into India. Right? Recently, Home Minister Amit Shah visited Harami Nala with BSF officials, and we have set up some infrastructure here to strengthen our border security. But this area remains contested, and as I told you, the solution is available. Pakistan has to agree to the Talwik principle. It's established principle under international law, right? So that's why experts say that it's one of the low-hanging fruits. If Pakistan shows some mature behavior, we can easily work out a solution and extend the international border and settle the dispute forever. But it remains a standing issue as Pakistan has shown no interest in working out a settlement. So both Siachen and Sir Creek are also very important topics, right? You might get a 10-mark question. UPSC might ask you to talk specifically about Siachen and Sir Creek. Got it? So let's move on to the next topic and understand Pakistan's policy of terrorism against India. After this, we will look at the current state of relations and the current situation in Pakistan, and that will end our discussion. So let's talk about why Pakistan has used terrorism as a weapon against India. What drives its strategy? What has Pakistan done to destabilize India? And what are the different threats that we have faced? So, this will be a broad discussion on Pakistan's policy of terrorism. I will not go into the details of Khalistan movement or Kashmir insurgency and terrorism because those are topics for internal security. In the subject of internal security, we have a separate chapter for terrorism. That is where we'll cover all the details. But from international relations perspective, we have to understand the policy of Pakistan and what India is doing to counter Pakistan's terrorism. See, Pakistan has become a state sponsor of terrorism, where state actors are supporting non state actors. State agencies are providing direct support to non state actors to wage a proxy war against India. It's a covert proxy war. Covert means secret. The links between the state and non state actors is covert. So, Pakistani state agencies like the ISI, which is Pakistan's intelligence agency, the Pakistani army, essentially the deep state. These are the state actors who are covertly backing non state actors like terrorist organizations against India. Pakistan has pursued this policy from many decades for now, right? India has been the biggest victim of terrorism, primarily because of this role of Pakistan, where state agencies have sponsored terrorism against our country. In fact, many countries use terrorism as a policy, as a weapon in their geopolitics. And Pakistan is a leader in this regard. It has become a terror factory, quite literally, right? It has used the Western support to its advantage. It has managed to channel funds and weapons to these terrorist organizations. And it has even provided a safe haven. It has created a terror sanctuary to host the terrorist outfits on its own soil. As we saw in the map at the very start of the chapter, in POK, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in Punjab, and also in Balochistan and along the Afpak border, it has allowed the terror groups to operate terror camps. The ISI and the army and even Pakistani Navy are directly involved in training these terrorists. They provide direct support, they give them all the training needed in building explosives, in military tactics, right? So such extent of support is provided along with channeling funds, that is terror financing. Pakistan has arranged for terror financing through money laundering routes. It has failed to implement the global standards against money laundering and terror financing. It has breached the standards of Financial Action Task Force or FATF. It has created a very fertile environment for terror financing to flourish, and it has arranged the supply of arms and weapons which is needed to arm these terrorist organizations. Is that clear? Pakistan also aids cross border terrorism, meaning it helps in the infiltration of terrorists into India. It has not only given a sanctuary for them in the country, it has not only given them all the support needed, it is also helping them to cross over into India. Along the border and along the line of control, several tunnels have been dug through which the terrorists infiltrate into the Indian side. Is that clear? Underground tunnels have been dug, especially near LOC and also near the Punjab border. Tunnels have been dug across the border to allow the infiltration to happen, to help the terrorists who are trained in Pakistan to cross over into India. Along with that, Pakistan deliberately breaks the ceasefire. Pakistani troops near LOC, they deliberately open fire against Indian positions during night time so that they can distract the Indian troops and give an opportunity for the terrorists to cross over into India. Even this is done by Pakistan. The Pakistani army and its border guarding force who are stationed near LOC, they deliberately start opening fire, heavy fire. They even fire mortars, shells, and they use assault rifles as well to open indiscriminate firing at Indian positions so that Indian army and BSF get distracted. And exploiting the chaos and the night cover, the terrorists will sneak across the LOC and enter Jammu and Kashmir. So that kind of direct support has been given for cross-border terrorism. Pakistan has used many other countries as well to launch attacks against India. It has used Nepal, Bangladesh, West Asian countries. It has tried using Sri Lanka and Maldives as well to create a base for many terrorist outfits. So, what explains this kind of obsession with terrorism? Why does Pakistan go to this extent of using terrorism against India? The answer lies in the initial enmity that started following partition and the Kashmir dispute that broke out. But along with this, there is another major factor that drives Pakistan's behavior. Along with this initial enmity related to Kashmir dispute, the 1971 defeat is what triggered Pakistan. As Pakistan lost more than half its territory due to India's intervention, and Bangladesh was born as an independent country, since then Pakistan has sworn revenge against India. It has sworn to retaliate against India for breaking Pakistan into two parts. And in the last 50 years, this is the strategy it has been pursuing. To target India and break India, it has relied on the covert proxy option because it realized that covert proxy wars are advantageous. It's much better than your regular conventional wars. Because see, by 1971, Pakistan had fought three wars with India, right? 1947, 1965, and 1971. All three were conventional wars fought using your conventional armed forces. Pakistan realized that it lost all the conventional wars and it understood that India had a superiority. India had an edge in any conventional conflict. Given that India has a larger armed force, better equipped, better trained armed forces, in any conventional conflict, India is likely to defeat Pakistan, right? India is likely to come on top of Pakistan. And also, Pakistan realized that conventional wars are expensive. You need to maintain very large armed forces, procure a lot of equipment which will cost you billions and billions of dollars, right? You need missiles, you need battle tanks, artillery guns, naval ships and submarines, fighter jets, aircrafts. They all cost a lot of money. And you need to bear the human cost of war. In a conventional war, thousands and lakhs could get killed. See what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. See what's happening with Israel and Hamas. In a conventional war where conventional weapons are used, large heavy weapons are used, the casualty rate, the death rate will be very, very high. You are going to lose thousands of your soldiers, lakhs of your civilians. So you have to be ready to pay the human cost. So that is why conventional wars are not very attractive. You can't sustain. You cannot prolong and sustain such conflicts, which means you may not achieve your desired objective. So instead, Pakistan realized the advantage of covert proxy war. All right? Its involvement in Afghanistan, starting from 1979, taught Pakistan a very valuable lesson. In 1979, Soviet troops had invaded Afghanistan, they occupied Afghanistan during the Cold War period. Because Soviet Union, which was a neighbor of Afghanistan, feared the rising American influence. So to counter the American influence, Soviet Union invaded the country, very similar to how it has invaded Ukraine, and they occupied Afghanistan. The US used this as an opportunity to target the Soviet troops, and the US launched a covert war against the Soviet occupation. The CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency of the US, worked with Pakistan's ISI, along with Saudi Arabia and European countries, to fund and train the Afghan Mujahideen. The Afghan Mujahideen was raised as a resistance against Soviet troops. Is that clear? The Afghan Mujahideen, which comprised of Pashtun community members from Afghanistan and Pakistan, they were radicalized and trained, given funds, weapons, and training to launch an insurgent war against the Soviet troops which were occupying Afghanistan. These Mujahideen fighters, who were trained largely by the ISI with CIA's help, they were very effective in weakening Soviet troops, and eventually they pushed out the Soviet troops. Now, this was a valuable lesson for Pakistan and a great opportunity for Pakistan. It was waiting for such opportunities against India, where it could launch a major covert war against India to exploit our internal divisions. Right? So as Pakistan became more prominent for US, the US relied entirely on Pakistan to train the Afghan Mujahideen. Right? Even before that, Pakistan had become their ally, close strategic military ally. So the Americans, even the Saudis and the Europeans, they wouldn't care what Pakistan would do with all the money and the weapons. So Pakistan conveniently diverted a part of these funds and weapons meant for Afghan Mujahideen and diverted them towards anti-India terrorist outfits. By 1970s, 1980s, many divisions had come up in India and new conflict zones were opening up, particularly in Punjab with the rise of the Khalistan movement. Then later, in 1987, separatist movement broke out in Kashmir. Multiple insurgent terrorist outfits were formed in Jammu and Kashmir as well. And prior to that, Khalistan outfits had come up in India and abroad. Right? So Pakistan sensed a great opportunity here. When Khalistan movement was rising in 1970s, when it was still in its initial stages, Pakistan capitalized on the opportunity and started directly backing the Khalistan movement. It supplied drugs, provided funds and weapons and training, and even sheltered the Khalistani terrorists in Pakistan. It used the same Afghan infrastructure created along the Af-Pak border to train Afghan Mujahideen. The same facilities were used to train Khalistan terrorists. Is that clear? They were sheltered in Pakistan by the ISI, and direct support was given where Afghan drugs were pumped into Punjab from across the border. The funds and weapons meant for the Mujahideen being sent by Western countries, part of it was diverted by the ISI to fund the rise of the Khalistan movement. So that is why the Khalistan movement quickly escalated from 1980 onwards. It's not a coincidence. The Afghan war began in 1979, 1980, and we parallelly saw the rise of Khalistan movement. Right? They are not parallel events or independent events. They are interlinked events. Pakistan is the connection. Pakistan was the one which connected the Mujahideen war with the Khalistan movement. Later, an opportunity came up in Kashmir in 1987, and Pakistan capitalized on it to promote anti India insurgent terrorist organizations and gave complete support to the Kashmir outfits as well. Is that clear? So it has played a direct role in destabilizing the entire region. In Afghanistan, Pakistan not only raised the Mujahideen, it even used the Mujahideen fighters in Kashmir later in 1990s. Because by 1989, Soviet troops had retreated. Soviet Union had been defeated. Now the Mujahideen fighters were free. Pakistan diverted these Afghan and Pakistani terrorists into Kashmir to fight in Kashmir. It played a direct role in the creation and rise of Taliban, the Afghan Taliban. It worked closely with Al Qaeda, which was sheltered by Taliban. It nurtured the Haqqani network, which is one of the branches of the Taliban, which has carried out many attacks against Indian interests in Afghanistan. So, like this, Pakistan has become the incubator of terror groups. Is that clear? If venture capitalists, if they incubate startups and support new industries, Pakistan has been the incubator of terrorism. It has created a terror factory, nothing short of a terror factory. Is that clear? It has created all the facilities. The camps are available, weapons are available, funds are available, right? Training support is available. And Pakistan does not act against them. So this infrastructure which Pakistan has created is primarily meant to be used against India. It has enabled the creation of multiple anti-India terror groups. There are several Kashmir-centric outfits that Pakistan has raised. For example, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Badr, and few Kashmir-centric separatist groups, local separatist groups like JKLF, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front. They've all got direct support from Pakistan. Khalistani outfits such as Babar Khalsa International, Khalistan Commando Force, Khalistan Tiger Force, Khalistan Zindabad Force, and of late, groups like International Sikh Youth Federation, the Sikhs for Justice, which is a new outfit based out of US and Canada. All these outfits are backed by Pakistan's ISI. Is that clear? And Pakistan doesn't stop here. It has even had previous connections with Northeast insurgents. I'll give you one example. In 1960s, when Mizo insurgency started against India, which was led by the Mizo National Front, the MNF, the Mizo insurgents were backed by Pakistan through East Pakistan. That is before Bangladesh was created. When East Pakistan existed, it gave direct shelter to Mizo National Front. The top leaders of MNF were sheltered in East Pakistan. They were given funds and weapons as well to wage this insurgent war against India. Is that clear? Later in Bangladesh, when hostile governments came up, as we have studied in the previous chapter, several Northeast insurgent outfits like NSCN, Ulfa, Bodo outfits like NDFB, they've all been sheltered in Bangladesh, and Pakistan has played a role in this. It has even tried building contacts with Naxals. Indian intelligence agencies, they have evidence to link Pakistan's ISI with the Naxal outfits. Some limited connection has existed between them. Pakistan has tried to contact Naxals, give them some kind of support. Even though external support is limited for Naxalism, some contact has existed in the past. So Pakistan does not give up any opportunity to destabilize India. Its goal is to bleed India through 1,000 cuts. This was the strategy that Pakistan adopted. This has been Pakistan's military doctrine against India. Covert proxy wars, as I was explaining, covert proxy wars are very cheap and the cost involved is less. It is cheaper to fund and the human cost is less for Pakistan. That is why it relies on the covert proxy option. It can always conceal its involvement. It can deny responsibility. Even if India blames Pakistan and brings some evidence to connect the ISI and the Pakistani army with these terrorist outfits, it can always deny responsibility by claiming plausible deniability. Plausibly, it can deny its involvement. It can always say that Pakistani government did not support these terrorists. Pakistani government did not order these attacks. There are rogue elements in our country. We ourselves are a victim of terrorism. Some of the rogue extremists are supporting them. Right? Such excuses can always be given by Pakistan. Excuse after excuse can be given to justify in front of the international community. Right? This is an advantage that comes from covert proxy war. And Pakistan has relied on this to bleed India through 1,000 cuts. Instead of delivering one cut through conventional war, where Pakistan might be defeated, it's better to deliver 1,000 cuts to India by exploiting our internal divides. Is that clear? So Pakistan has been at the forefront of destabilizing India, sabotaging India internally by exploiting every single opportunity it has got. So in internal security, you'll study more about this. You'll understand the kind of backing it has given to Khalistan groups, the support it has given to Kashmir-centric outfits, the support it has given to other groups such as Indian Mujahideen, how it has used Haqqani network to target India in Afghanistan, how it has used Taliban and Al-Qaeda to create support base for anti-India terror groups along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Right? So all these details we'll discuss more about it under internal security. But from IR perspective, just understand why Pakistan follows this policy of terrorism. What does it gain? What threat does it pose to India? We have seen many major attacks, starting from the 93 bomb blasts, the Bombay blasts, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, the parliament attacks, and the numerous other incidents that have happened across Indian cities. It has basically spread urban terrorism against India, right? So this is what we see from Pakistan, and it continues this policy even today. See, after the Mumbai attacks, which was the biggest of its kind, which was faced by India, there was a lot of international pressure on Pakistan. India exerted diplomatic pressure. We got the support of Western countries as well. And this international pressure has pushed Pakistan to stay away from attacking Indian cities and Indian civilian population. That's why you notice that after 2008, it has not used Lashkar-e-Toiba for a major attack against India. Because it was Lashkar-e-Toiba which carried out the Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. There is tremendous international pressure on Pakistan to not attack Indian cities and India's civilian population. So it has adopted a new strategy since then, a new tactic. It has tried using only Jaish-e-Mohammed to attack military sites, military installations. I'll mention these attacks later. We'll look at the recent attacks which have happened, how it has used Jaish-e-Mohammed for repeated attacks on military bases of India. Instead of choosing civilian targets and cities, it is using Jaish-e-Mohammed to target military sites. Because then the same international support will not exist. Right? There is a difference in attacking a civilian target and a military target. So Pakistan has exploited this opportunity and it's using a new strategy against India where it's primarily focusing on military sites that too near the border and near Kashmir. Apart from that, it's trying to revive the Khalistan movement. We have seen recent attempts to revive the dormant Khalistan movement, and this is going on since 2010. It's not a new phenomenon. You might be reading about it in newspapers today in the last few months. right? The revival of Khalistan movement. But this is going on from 13 years. We have noticed these developments from 2010. So these new strategies are being adopted. So what you can learn here is that Pakistan keeps adapting. No matter what happens, it will come out with new strategies, new tactics to keep targeting India. It means it will not give up its policy of terrorism so easily. All right. So this remains a big challenge for India. Subsequent governments have always faced this biggest challenge with Pakistan. All right. Now, how do you talk to such a country? How do you negotiate with them? How do you have relations with them when constantly they're sponsoring terrorism against us? Right. This has been India's position since the days of Vajpayee and later Manmohan Singh and even now Modi. We have made it clear that talks and terror cannot go hand in hand. You can't expect to talk to you and have friendly relations with you when you're constantly sponsoring terrorism against us. That's why India has suspended the talks. As of now, we don't have even a basic relationship. Formal diplomatic ties exist, but we don't have a decent relationship. We don't have any negotiations going on. There's hardly any cooperation because constantly there is terrorism sponsored against India. And every time there is a big attack, we put talks on hold. We suspend all the talks, saying that talks and terrorism cannot go hand in hand. All right. So I think this gives you a fair idea as to how Pakistan behaves, how it targets India, how it tries to destabilize India. Right. So in internal security, we'll study more about the response as well. How India is countering terrorism. How are we using our intelligence agencies, our security agencies to counter terrorism? We'll look at the laws we have. We'll discuss our global efforts through UN and FATF to punish Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism. Right? We'll study all of that with great details under internal security. But from IR point of view, I think this should be enough to understand Pakistan's policy of terrorism. Now let's discuss one more topic. It's an old topic, but still it's relevant because it's frequently in news. The Indus Water Treaty of 1960. The Indus is a shared resource between India and Pakistan, right? The Indus drainage basin, the river basin, is the lifeline of millions of people, both on the Indian side and the Pakistani side. And you have six major rivers which are part of the Indus basin. You have the primary Indus River, Jhelum and Chenab. Then you have Ravi, Bias, and Satluj. These are the six primary rivers of the Indus basin. Right? Most of them originate in Tibet, in the Himalayan ranges. They flow through Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab and Haryana on the Indian side, and then drain into Pakistan. So India is the upper riparian. We are located in the upstream, whereas Pakistan is in the downstream. Pakistan becomes the lower riparian state. Eventually, these rivers drain into Arabian Sea. All right, they drain into the Arabian Sea. So Pakistan has a lot of dependency on some of these rivers for irrigation, for drinking water, and for other purposes. Same with India. We have a lot of dependency on some of these rivers for irrigation, hydropower generation, and for drinking purposes and other industrial consumption. So sharing these waters had been a source of dispute. Given that Kashmir dispute had erupted, we had already fought a war in 1947, right? Tensions were already there in India-Pakistan relations. So to ensure that water does not become a source of conflict, both the sides negotiated a treaty which was mediated by the World Bank. The World Bank acted as the mediator and worked out the Indus Water Treaty. According to the treaty, the Indus Basin is divided into western rivers and eastern rivers. The drainage basin has been divided. You have the western rivers and eastern rivers. Western rivers are Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. The eastern rivers includes Ravi, Bias, and Satluj. All right. And depending on the needs of India and Pakistan, a fair share has been allocated to both the parties. In case of Western rivers, Pakistan has been given a higher allocation. Pakistan gets a higher share of these waters as Pakistan is more dependent, right? And as India has other sources through which we can fulfill our needs, Pakistan has been given a higher share and a greater degree of control over the Western rivers. See, again, you need not go into the specifics. You need not learn how many cusecs have been assigned to Pakistan and India. When should we release the waters to Pakistan? Those are very technical details. That's not needed for the exam. Just know that Pakistan has a higher share, has a higher allocation and greater control over the Western rivers, which means India has been given a limited share of Western rivers. It's not that we can't use Western rivers, we can, but there is a limited share. All right. Only a small part of it has been assigned to India. We can use it for some basic purposes. And the condition on India is that we cannot block or divert these three rivers. This cannot be done. It is explicitly prohibited. India is prohibited from diverting these three rivers or blocking them permanently, which means we can't build regular water storage dams. We can't divert the water entirely for irrigation. We can't divert that into canals. We can't do that. However, hydro projects are allowed. These are run of the river projects or run of the mill projects. All right. It means you stop the water short for a short period to generate the hydropower potential, to use the water to turn the turbines, you generate electricity, and then you allow the water to flow. So just a hydro plant will not block the water or divert the water. So these are run of the river or run of the mill projects. So such projects are allowed for India. India can build hydro plants to generate electricity, ensure we are not diverting it or blocking it, and release the water back into Pakistan. So this will not only maintain ecological flow to maintain the ecological needs, it will also help in fisheries, in navigation, and provides enough water to Pakistan for irrigation, for drinking, and for all other purposes. So we have a limited share and limited control over these rivers. We can use it for some basic needs. Some small share is assigned for drinking and irrigation. Rest is for hydropower generation, and we cannot block or divert these three rivers. Got it? Now coming to eastern rivers, Ravi, Bias, and Satluj, they are the lifeline of Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh. We are heavily dependent on these waters for irrigation. Farmers in Punjab and Haryana, right? The green revolution of India was powered by these three rivers in the Punjab Haryana belt. It is critical for drinking purposes, critical for industrial consumption. All right. So, accordingly, India has been given greater control. India has been given greater control of these rivers with a higher allocation. We can utilize these waters to meet all the needs on the Indian side. We can build regular dams, divert a part of it as well, block and store the water as well. All right. We can build regular dams on these rivers like Bakra Nangal has been built. Right. You can store the water for a long time. You can divert it for irrigation, for drinking, and for all other purposes, be it hydropower generation or industrial usage. India has every right to use these waters, but remaining share should be left to flow into Pakistan. Pakistan gets a limited share. We can't block the waters entirely as such because that will affect the ecology as well, right? We have to maintain ecological flow. And Pakistan also has some needs in the downstream. So a limited share is given to Pakistan where we allow the rest of the water to flow into Pakistan. So these are the basic terms of the Indus Water Treaty. And India has strongly been committed to the Indus Water Treaty. India has a strong commitment. We have never breached these commitments. Is that clear? We have always maintained and upheld this international commitment. It's a global commitment we have made. It was mediated by the World Bank, and it's a very important bilateral treaty, right? So India has abided by the terms. Every year, the Indus Water Commissions, they meet. The commissioners, they meet every year to exchange data, to share information on how they are abiding by the treaty. They share the water data, they plan for flood management, because I hope you know the Indus is known for flooding. Just last year, Pakistan was devastated by the massive floods witnessed in the Indus basin, right? This year, even Ravi, Satluj also have flooded, causing massive floods in Punjab and Haryana. So to manage the flood waters, to deal with environmental issues, climate change, and let know each other that we are following the treaty, regular meetings are held between the Indus Water Commissioners. Permanent Indus Water Commissions are set up. There is an Indus Water Commission in India, Indus Water Commission in Pakistan. It will be headed by the Water Secretary from the Ministry of Water Resources. So they are the commissioners as well. They meet regularly every year. At the start of the year, they meet, exchange the data and the information to ensure that both are following the terms of the treaty. See, in India, there has been a call in the last few years to quit Indus Water Treaty as a retaliation for terror attacks. This suggestion has been provided both within the government and outside the government. This idea has existed from many years, from at least 20 years, especially after terrorism increased against India. Many experts, thinkers, and even within government circles, there has been a debate whether should we use Indus Water Treaty to punish Pakistan. The question is, should we weaponize Indus Water Treaty? Should we weaponize the treaty as we have the advantage, we are the upper riparian? Should we use this as a geopolitical tool to punish Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism against India? The suggestion is that when there is a major attack against India, we should retaliate by suspending the treaty, by quitting the treaty entirely. Recently, the issue came up again when the Pulwama attacks happened, right? There was a strong call within the government and even outside, in the media and amongst think tanks and strategic experts, that we should weaponize the treaty and quit the treaty so we can use this as a geopolitical tool against Pakistan. So sufficient debates have happened around this issue, but India has decided to not break the terms, to not break the commitment, right? This is not the decision of just one government. All the subsequent governments have taken the same call, and this is the right decision as well. See, it is very tempting to retaliate and seek revenge and punish after a terror attack, right? Because passions are very high, right? You are disturbed by the attack, by looking at the losses suffered. So you feel the urge for short-term retaliation, short-term pleasure. But in the long run, quitting the treaty will not work in India's favor. And that is a correct assessment that Indian governments have made. See, if we quit the treaty, first of all, you'll be breaking an international commitment, right? So this affects your global image. On one hand, we are saying we should follow rules-based order. We are telling China it's breaking international rules. It's not following international laws. On the other hand, if we quit the treaty and politicize this treaty, right, it harms our image, it harms our position, our standing on rules-based order systems, right? The world works on international rules, international laws. Responsible countries have to follow them, respect them, uphold them. If countries keep breaking these treaties and commitments, then it leads to the collapse of the rules-based order. So India has always had a strong commitment for a rules-based order system. We respect international laws, and any global commitment we make, we abide by it. That's why India is seen as a trusted partner, reliable partner. Tomorrow, if we break the treaty, no one will trust India. They will always have a doubt that India might sign agreements today, later they'll quit, right? That sets a wrong precedent. Other than that, by weaponizing Indus waters, we will actually help Pakistan. We will help the deep state, the army and the ISI, to further their propaganda against India. They're already raising allegations that India carries out water terrorism. Lies are spread in Pakistan by terror leaders like Hafiz Saeed. Hafiz Saeed, the founder of Jamaat-ud-Dawa and Lashkar, he conducts public rallies. He addresses the farmers and illiterate people, right, who have no idea about geopolitics, and he tells them that India is using water as a terror tool. If floods happen in Pakistan or droughts happen in Pakistan, he blames it on India, saying India is doing it. These lies are already being spread. So if we were to actually quit the treaty, it will aid these terrorists, it will aid the ISI to further carry out propaganda against India and drive recruitment for their terror organizations. Because see, water is a question of humanity. Water is a question of human well-being. And it's easy to trigger emotions based on water. If two states of India can fight for water, imagine what will be the reaction if India quits and if there are floods and droughts in Pakistan, right? It becomes very easy to mobilize more support for terrorism against India based on India quitting the treaty. So in the long run, it doesn't really help us. So on all these grounds, subsequent governments have decided not to politicize the treaty and not to weaponize the treaty and use it for geopolitical reasons. So we remain committed to the treaty. But Pakistan, on the other hand, has created as many problems as possible. Even though we have followed all the terms, it has repeatedly filed cases against India. It has taken India to court at International Court of Justice and Permanent Court of Arbitration. At these global judicial platforms, it has filed many cases against Indian projects such as the Kishan Ganga project, the Baglihar project. See, India has some major projects which we have pursued to manage the waters and to mainly generate hydropower. These projects that I'm mentioning, Kishan Ganga, Baglihar, and few others, they are all run-of-the-river projects, which is allowed under the treaty. We are not storing the water permanently. We are not diverting it. We are not blocking it. We just generate hydropower, use the basic allocation given to us, and rest of the water is allowed to flow into Pakistan. Even though we are strictly following it, Pakistan has deliberately filed cases to derail these projects, to hamper the development of Jammu and Kashmir, to keep J&K backward, to ensure that India does not provide development activities in J&K. Pakistan has deliberately targeted these projects, trying to delay them. But in all the cases, India has won. The rulings have gone in India's favor. In these cases at ICJ and other bodies, India has won the cases because we have followed the terms of the treaty. But by filing these litigations, it is trying to delay the projects. Today, we have many more projects planned in the Indus Basin. You have the Ratle hydropower project and many more which are coming up. So I ask you guys to take up a homework, take up an assignment, just identify the names of all the major hydro projects that India is executing on the Indus rivers. All right, we have a few important projects. So just make a note, just be familiar with the names. All right, so take this as a small homework or an assignment. Now, coming to the last part of today's discussion, let's go through the current relations under the Modi government. I just want to give you a summary of how ties have developed in the last 8 years or 9 years. And let's look at what is happening in Pakistan right now, because that is a current issue. See, Prime Minister Modi, after coming to power, he followed the precedent that was laid by Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. These two prime ministers as well, when they came to power, they tried reaching out to Pakistan and they extended a hand of friendship. Despite all the problems Pakistan had created for us, right? New Indian governments have always tried to reset the relationship, hoping that Pakistan will change, hoping that Pakistan might reciprocate. Prime Minister Vajpayee started a practice where, despite all the problems, the difficulties, a hand of friendship was extended. PM Vajpayee, he carried out a historic visit to Lahore. He held the Lahore summit in late 90s with Nawaz Sharif. It was a historic visit. He visited Pakistan. Many important projects and initiatives were launched. A lot of friendly initiatives were taken up. The bus service was started from Punjab to Pakistan, along the LOC from Jammu and Kashmir to POK, from Delhi to Islamabad. Train services were started, the Samjhauta Express, right? Border trade was opened. Many friendly initiatives were taken up, but every time the two governments get closer, the deep state will retaliate against it. Vajpayee's initiatives were derailed because of repeated terror attacks and the Kargil conflict. The IC 814 hijacking, the parliament attacks, and many other attacks that happened in Delhi and Mumbai. They derailed our peace efforts and destroyed the relationship. Then came Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and again he tried to reach out to Pakistan, extend a hand of friendship. This time, Parvez Musharraf was the leader. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh tried building a bond, tried opening a back channel talk through their secret envoys. They held back channel diplomacy because sometimes when relations are complicated, you can't negotiate in the open, in the public domain, because there's a lot of media pressure, public pressure that will derail our friendly initiatives. So in complex relations, back channel diplomacy is used, where leaders will appoint a secret envoy, they'll talk to each other and they'll try to achieve some progress. So Manmohan Singh and Parvez Musharraf were making some progress, and it was disrupted by the Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Even Prime Minister Modi, after coming to power, tried opening a new chapter. He invited Nawaz Sharif along with all the SARC leaders to his swearing-in ceremony. The Modi government launched the Neighborhood First policy, announcing that we are prioritizing our ties with our neighbors, which would include Pakistan as well. Right? This was a great friendly gesture from India. Following this, the two leaders met again at Ufa in Russia, where the SCO BRIC summit was taking place. And India-Pakistan even came out with a joint statement. Modi and Nawaz Sharif, they met again. They were building a close personal bond. They were actually becoming good friends. A personal chemistry was developing between them, just like the previous leaders. They came out with a joint statement. This was the first joint statement after many, many years. And in this joint statement, there was no mention of Kashmir, which has been Pakistan's obsession. Pakistan has always said, if we have to talk to India, talk about Kashmir first. India has said, if we have to talk about terrorism. You don't discuss terrorism, we'll not talk about Kashmir. So this has always led to failure of talks. Like under Prime Minister Vajpayee, there was Agra summit in 2001, where Parvez Musharraf came to India, and Parvez Musharraf demanded that Kashmir should be the point of discussion. But Vajpayee administration refused. Since terrorism had become the threat, we said terrorism has to be discussed. Terror and talks will not go hand in hand. You can't be bleeding Indians and you can't expect us to talk about Kashmir. We rejected those talks. So Agra summit ended as a failure. So given this history, the joint statement at Ufa was a very, very big development. For the first time, Kashmir reference was dropped, terrorism was mentioned, and India-Pakistan agreed to discuss all issues, negotiate, and build bilateral relations. This was seen as a positive development, which was followed by a surprise visit by the Prime Minister to Pakistan. PM Modi was coming from a foreign visit. He landed in Pakistan unannounced to attend a personal event in the family of Nawaz Sharif. There was a wedding taking place in the family of Nawaz Sharif. PM Modi landed unannounced and made a surprise visit to attend the family event. And that showed the personal chemistry and the bond that was building between the two leaders. So initially, you saw these positive developments happening. But as you can expect, there is a clear pattern here. Every time there is an improvement, every time the two governments get closer, when civilian governments on both sides, when they get closer, this relationship which is forming will be disrupted by a major terror attack. Terrorism will be used by the deep state to disrupt the friendly ties which are developing between the two governments. Because if India becomes a friend, If normalcy comes in this relationship, the Pakistani army and the ISI will lose their relevance. People will tomorrow start questioning, why is the army cornering all resources when people of Pakistan are suffering? Pakistani people have no electricity, no healthcare, no jobs. How come Pakistani army is getting all resources? Those questions will come up, right? Pakistani army and ISI, the deep state, will remain relevant only when there are tensions with India, only when India is the enemy number one. Is that clear? That is why I spent so much time at the beginning to explain that analysis. The deep state does not want good relations between the Indian government and the Pakistani government. There have been Pakistani leaders who have tried to normalize the relationship, but every time it happens, the deep state hits back. There will be a MiG terror attack which will disrupt the relationship. Is that clear? This is a pattern. And we saw this happening again with repeated attacks against military bases of India. Since Pakistan was under international pressure to not attack Indian cities and civilian population and to not work with Lashkar-e-Toiba, it started using Jaish-e-Mohammed to specifically target military bases near the border areas and in Kashmir. We saw two major attacks at Gurdaspur in Punjab and Pathankot Air Base in Punjab. These are forward locations close to the border, right? Both were major attacks carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. Parallelly, young breed of terrorists like Burhan Wani were promoted in Jammu and Kashmir to trigger unrest in Kashmir. When Indian forces killed Burhan Wani, right, it led to mob violence and severe unrest in Kashmir, which was exploited by Pakistan. We saw that Pakistan was encouraging civilians in Kashmir to mob the army and disrupt their counter-terror operations. Stone pelting was being encouraged deliberately. It was a deliberate strategy to trigger the Indian forces to open fire against civilians. The ISI was sponsoring separatist elements in Kashmir following the killing of Burhan Wani. Burhan Wani was a terrorist. Young breed of terrorists were being supported. When India acted against them, eliminated these terrorists, right? There was support from civilians. There was mass unrest that broke out, and the ISI supported the mobs, pushing them to disrupt army operations. So when live encounters were going on, counter-terror operations were going on, civilians would surround the place. They would pelt and throw stones at Indian army. This would disrupt the operation, threatening the lives of everyone. So Indian army would be forced to retaliate and open fire on civilians to defend themselves, leading to deaths and injuries among civilians. CRPF, which is also deployed in Kashmir to maintain law and order, would also retaliate and open fire pellet guns to control the mobs that would injure many people and sometimes kill civilians as well. These pictures and videos would be published by Pakistan at global level. This was Pakistan's strategy to internationalize the Kashmir conflict. It would bring up the issue at United Nations. It would bring up the issue at Organization of Islamic Cooperation and accuse India of committing human rights violations. Because when forces open fire, even if they fire rubber bullets or pellet guns or tear gas, etc., there will be injuries. In close quarters, there could be death as well. If women, children, or old people who are civilians, if they get injured or killed, right, the pictures and videos don't look good. Even though it's a necessity for the forces to protect themselves, Pakistan will use the opportunity to allege that human rights violations are happening, that Indian forces are targeting civilians. But the trigger is actually coming from Pakistan. It was a deliberate strategy to use civilians to mob the army, to prevent the operations and pelt stones, so that we would be triggered to push the mob back by using these methods where civilians might get injured or killed. Is that clear? So these are the tactics Pakistan has repeatedly used against India. Then came the massive Uri attack in 2016, again carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. This time, India retaliated with coercive diplomacy. We put tremendous pressure on Pakistan through international efforts. We cornered Pakistan at the UN, at Financial Action Task Force. We got support from US and Western countries to put more pressure on Pakistan. And within the region, we isolated Pakistan by excluding it from the SARC. Is that clear? See, we can't remove Pakistan from SARC, but we sidelined the SARC grouping itself to isolate Pakistan. When the Uri attacks happened in 2016, in just a few weeks, the SARC summit was about to happen in Islamabad. Pakistan was hosting it. The Islamabad summit was about to happen. But India boycotted the SARC summit. As Pakistan was responsible for Uri attacks, right? We adopted an approach called SARC minus Pakistan, meaning we will work with South Asian neighbors, but not through SARC, because Pakistan is a problem here. So India boycotted the SARC summit, and all the SARC members, they supported India. We'll study more about this tomorrow when we take up these regional groupings. All the SARC members, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, Afghanistan, they all supported India. They blamed Pakistan for the Uri attacks, and they all boycotted the Islamabad summit. The SARC summit did not happen. So since then, we have sidelined SARC and we have isolated Pakistan in the region through diplomatic efforts. Apart from coercive diplomacy, India decided to use hard power as well and carried out surgical strikes. Indian Special Forces, the Para SF, the Para Commandos of the Indian Army, infiltrated into POK across the LOC and struck the terror launch pads that are present right along the line of control. Pakistan would have set up these temporary terror launch pads where the trained terrorists are brought for temporary posting, and from there they are pushed across the border into India. The permanent terror camps are located deep inside Pakistan so that the permanent facilities are away from India's reach. So India can't easily attack them. So the larger terror camps, the permanent terror training camps, they're closer to the Afghan border, right, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and towards the Afghan border. Whereas the launch pads, which are temporary facilities, they exist only for few days. They can keep shifting. The trained terrorists are brought here to these temporary terror launch pads, from where they are pushed across the border into India, across the LOC into India. These launch pads were targeted by Indian Special Forces in a very successful operation, and many terrorists were eliminated. This was military action, right? Pakistan treated this as an act of war, as a breach of Pakistan's sovereignty. And as a result, tensions increased and the relationship completely broke down. Because of these events, the Gurdaspur and Pathankot attacks, unrest in Kashmir, and Uri attacks, the relationship completely broke down, and it further escalated after the Pulwama attacks. The Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out a suicide bombing targeting the CRPF convoy at Pulwama. 40 CRPF Jawans were martyred, right? It enraged the country. The government retaliated again by carrying out Balkot airstrikes using the Indian Air Force. This time, Indian fighter jets breached Pakistani airspace, went deep inside into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and bombed Balkot, where terror camps are located, permanent terror camps of Jaish-e-Mohammed and other terror groups are located. Again, according to India, multiple terrorists were killed. But Pakistan saw this as a breach of its sovereignty. It treated this as an act of war, and as expected, it retaliated against India. Even the Pakistani Air Force entered Indian airspace the next day. I'm sure all of you remember this, right? This resulted in an aerial dogfight between Indian Air Force and Pakistani Air Force. This was the first time it was happening after 1971. After 1971, Indian jets had never entered Pakistani airspace, right? We had never had an aerial dogfight between the two air forces after 1971. For the first time, these incidents happened. As a result, tensions increased. Both the sides shot down one fighter jet. We shot down a F-16, they shot down a MiG-21, and an Indian pilot unfortunately landed in POK. As his plane was crashing, he ejected, and Wing Commander Abhinandan landed in POK, and he was captured as a POW, as a prisoner of war. But following negotiations, he was released safely, right? He was given back to India. But the crisis escalated and the tensions increased, and India suspended border trade, See, first of all, trade between India and Pakistan has been minimal. All right, we have one border checkpost, the Wagah Atari checkpost, integrated checkpost, where some trade was happening. Even this was shut, and the local trade along LOC between Kashmiri villages, that was entirely stopped. Border trade was completely shut, and MFN status was revoked by India, the most favored nation status which countries give to each other as per WTO. This was revoked by India to downgrade the economic relations. So since then, our economic and diplomatic ties have been completely downgraded. The only positive development was inauguration of Kartarpur corridor. It's a cultural initiative, because there are two important gurudwaras, one on the Indian side and one on the Pakistani side. In the Gurdaspur district in Punjab, there's a very sacred gurudwara. All right, it's very sacred for the Sikh community. On the other side in Kartarpur in Pakistan, there is another sacred gurudwara. This is where it's believed that Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, is believed to have spent his last years, the final years. These gurudwaras got separated because of the partition, right? Because of the tensions and the hard borders, Sikh pilgrims could not visit Kartarpur. The only route for them was through Pakistan, right? They had to get a Pakistani visa, which was always difficult for Indians. So as a result, Sikhs could never visit Kartarpur, right? Even if they tried, it would be very complicated and risky. So the request was to create a visa-free corridor. And in 2019, finally, India-Pakistan fulfilled this promise. India and Pakistan worked together to create a visa-free corridor for 6 kilometers, where Indian pilgrims can enter Pakistan, reach Kartarpur, pay their respects at the Gurudwara, and come back on the same day. So such a visa-free corridor has been created, and this is the only positive development. Apart from that, everything has gone downhill since 2016. Later, India revoked the special status of J&K under Article 370 and reorganized Jammu and Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, into two union territories. Obviously, Pakistan has opposed these changes. It has criticized India for these changes, taken this issue again to UN and OIC, accusing India of changing the status quo in the Kashmir dispute. Right? Because this changes the status quo on the ground. The removal of special status and reorganizing J&K into a union territory. It brings J&K under greater control of the center. Correct? So Pakistan has opposed all these changes, and tensions have further escalated between the two sides. So we haven't seen any much improvement in the last few years, and this is how things remain as of now. But right now, the biggest worry for India is the crisis, the internal crisis that has emerged in Pakistan. In the last couple of years, Pakistan has been staring at a deep-rooted crisis, that too on multiple fronts. There is a political crisis, a serious economic crisis, and a security crisis. Essentially, Pakistan is staring at collapse. Potentially, there is a risk of the Pakistani state collapsing completely. Politically, what has happened is that Imran Khan, the former prime minister, the leader of Tehreek-e-Insaf, right? His party was seen to be contradictory to the interests of the deep state. Even though Imran Khan was initially backed by the army and the ISI, later they had a fallout. They had their own differences which came up, and Imran Khan's popularity kept growing. So last year, the deep state pushed out Imran Khan. They triggered a political crisis, pushed out the prime minister, and new governments have been formed, and the political crisis is persisting. In the last few months itself, Pakistan has got two prime ministers. Right now, a caretaker prime minister has been appointed to lead the country towards elections next month. Mostly it will happen in November 23. And Imran Khan parallelly has been leading his own rebellion, is leading massive protests against the deep state, the army, and the other political parties. And he has been arrested on corruption charges. Right? I'm sure you would have read about this in newspapers. So this has pushed the country into a political crisis again. It shows the extent to which the army and the ISI interfere in Pakistan's politics. Right? Pakistan never witnesses free and fair elections. All the political changes that happen, They are all largely engineered by the deep state. So the rising popularity of Imran Khan, the divisions between these various parties, and the involvement of the deep state is increasing the crisis. So everything will depend on how the elections will happen. Will fair elections be held? Will Pakistan remain a democracy, or will the military do something again? These remain some big questions. And as Imran Khan has got a lot of loyal followers and supporters, there is a possibility that rebellions might break out. When Imran Khan was pushed out and corruption charges were filed against him, it led to large protests. These were unprecedented. Pakistan had never seen such kind of protests against the deep state. In support of Imran Khan, massive protests broke out, indicating the divisions, the political divisions in the country. Right? So this represents a political risk. Next, Pakistan is staring at a very serious economic challenge. The economic mismanagement and all the diversion of funds towards sponsoring terrorism, military modernization has destroyed its economy. It has borrowed heavily. There are many foreign debts which are pending. Several loans it has taken, it has not repaid them. And its forex reserves have dipped, similar to the crisis that Sri Lanka has been facing. Right? It's facing a very serious forex crunch. It doesn't have enough forex reserves to continue imports beyond few weeks. Inflation levels have skyrocketed. The last I checked, inflation levels were in the range of 25 to 30%. This is massive. It's almost runaway inflation. Compared to that, inflation in India is around 4 to 5%, which is manageable. Right? So the poor people are at the receiving end. Basic services have been disrupted. There is a massive electricity shortage. Pakistan is not able to continue its energy imports. It's not able to generate enough electricity. Water supply has been affected. Right? The economy is in a crisis mode. Jobs have been compromised. Agriculture also has suffered. And the floods of last year has added to the problems. So there is a very serious economic challenge the country is facing. And right now it's looking at a bailout package from the IMF. It's working out a bailout package, and without this support, the Pakistani economy might collapse. Until then, Pakistan's best friends, the all-weather friends, they are giving some financial support. China, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, they have given some financial packages amounting to few $1 billion to support and sustain the economy. That's why Pakistan is still surviving as of now, or else it would have gone bankrupt by now, like Sri Lanka. So by that time, it is looking to work out a bailout package with the IMF. So the economic crisis is not going away anytime soon. It's going to persist. If it is not handled well, if the political challenges increase, if the political social crisis increases, it will further destabilize the economy, possibly pushing the country towards economic collapse. And parallelly, the security crisis has escalated, the internal crisis. Finally, Pakistan is paying the price for breeding terrorism and radicalism. The terrorism it has nurtured has today come back to bite Pakistan itself. There is a terror group called TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or also called the Pakistan Taliban. It's essentially the Pakistan branch of Taliban. Just like you have Afghan Taliban, which has toppled the Afghan government and captured power in Afghanistan since 2021. Similarly, the Pak Taliban, the TTP, wants to topple the Pakistani state. It wants to remove the Pakistani state and capture power to establish an Islamic state. So TTP has been repeatedly carrying out attacks against the Pakistani government and the Pakistani army. All right, in the last 15 to 18 years, TTP has been a major security threat for Pakistan. Recently, when Afghan Taliban came to power in 2021, it had mediated a deal. It had worked out a deal, as it has ties with TTP and as it has very good ties with Pakistan. It had worked out a deal to ensure TTP does not attack Pakistan. But few months ago, in November 2022, the TTP broke the deal And since then, it has scaled up the attacks against Pakistan. You might have read in newspapers in the last few months, there have been some major attacks in Pakistan, and most of them are carried out by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Its goal is to throw the state out, topple the Pakistani state, and capture power. There are Baloch rebel groups which are also mobilizing and carrying out more attacks in the last few months. Right? Baloch rebel groups are fighting for independence. There are few Sindh outfits as well, Sindh nationalist outfits. So these internal challenges for Pakistan is very serious. It's a serious concern, because if the state were to collapse, the biggest fear is about Pakistan's nuclear weapons. This is a nightmare for India and for all the global powers, US, European countries, even China, right? And of course, India. They're all deeply concerned. What will happen to the Pakistani nuclear arsenal if the state were to collapse? Given the challenges it is facing, right? If few things go wrong from here, it's very much possible that the Pakistani state will collapse. It will give a free rein for all the terror groups, the radical elements. Within Pakistani forces, there are radicals who are present. Pakistan itself has admitted this. Within the Pakistani army, within the ISI, there are several rogue officers who have been so radicalized that they align with terror groups instead of the Pakistani state. So if there were to be an uprising, or if there were to be a complete collapse of the state, the biggest fear is terrorist groups getting hold of nuclear weapons, right? So the crisis in Pakistan is of great interest to India. India closely watches these developments. The political, economic, security developments are closely watched by India, right? So this is something you should pay attention going forward. So in current affairs, ensure that you read these articles that deal with the internal challenges of Pakistan, because it is relevant for India. Any adverse development in Pakistan will affect India. The security crisis, the economic crisis will have a bearing on India's security, on India's national interests. So that is why it becomes relevant for the exam. So with this, we can complete today's session. We can end the module for today. So let's just look at the questions, a couple of them, and we can wrap up for today. Nilesh is asking, sir, why the idea of Khalistan has spread on the Indian side, not on the Pakistani side? See, that's because Pakistan is the primary sponsor of the Khalistan movement. It would never allow the Khalistan outfits to spread their ideology on the other side of Punjab. And also, most of the Sikh community is on the Indian side, right? During partition, most of them migrated back to India. You have a very small Sikh minority in Pakistan. Amandeep is asking, Dogra got Jammu because it was given by Maharaja Ranjit Singh. How Afghan war comes into picture? Correct? Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his ally Gulab Singh, they inherited J&K, the Jammu and Kashmir region, into the Dogra clan. But the Anglo-Sikh war and Anglo-Afghan war, right? They did have a connection. The British, who controlled all these territories at one point, following the Anglo-Afghan and Anglo-Sikh wars, gave some parts of the territory to the Dogras. Kamlesh is asking, in 65, we captured several Pakistani territories, much more than what Pakistan had. So didn't we technically win the war? See, both India and Pakistan had captured few territories in the 65 conflict. But through the Tashkent Agreement, Soviet Union and even US was also acting as a mediator. Under the Tashkent Agreement, they made India and Pakistan agree that they'll give up all the territories they had taken. They'll come back to the previous positions. So status quo was restored through the Tashkent Agreement. In fact, someone has asked the same question. Explain Tashkent Agreement, Akula, right? I mentioned that Tashkent Agreement ended the war. It convinced both India and Pakistan that we will give up the territories that we are occupying. In the war, the territories that were taken, they were given back, they were returned. The troops were retreated. And whatever positions they maintained before, they returned that normalcy back. That's why the war was more of a stalemate. All right. And they also agreed not to meddle with each other, not to interfere, and maintain cordial bilateral relations. So those were the basic terms of Tashkent Agreement. Why Saurabh Kalia, the martyr of Kargil war, has not been given justice? Smita is asking. Saurabh Kalia was an Indian soldier who was taken as POW during the Kargil conflict, and he was severely tortured by the Pakistani forces and killed. Pakistan denies the allegations, but India says this was a war crime. right? POWs have to be treated with dignity according to Geneva Convention. But Pakistan had violated the Geneva Convention norms and committed severe torture as well. So that's why India raised these war crime allegations. But again, international law is weak, right? How do you enforce these provisions? We did oppose, we did raise international pressure, but nothing happened after that. Pakistan keeps denying that it tortured Saurabh Kalia. Sanskar is asking, can India play a covert role to topple Pakistan? India would never do that because collapse of Pakistan is our biggest nightmare. As much as we would like to punish Pakistan, we wouldn't like to see Pakistan fail, right? Trust me, there's no other country than India which doesn't want Pakistan to fail, because the failure of Pakistani state is worse than what it is currently. As I told you, if terrorists get a free hand and if they get access to nuclear weapons, that is the worst case scenario for India. So India would never attempt such a move. Rahul is asking a question on Israel-Palestine conflict. Don't worry, we'll come to it. We still have many more classes. We have a separate class for West Asia. That's where we'll discuss Israel-Palestine, not here. All right. So, guys, these were some of the questions. So, with this, we can end the session for today. We'll meet again tomorrow. We'll take up the next module. We'll look at Afghanistan and some important regional groupings. Right. So, till then, take care. Let me know how the class went, and I'll see you tomorrow.